Generate udah. Saya dulu. Oh, okay. Just wait a couple minutes because need to have someone to come inside.
Okay.
I'm going to open.
We're doing really good on time.
Yeah. It is.
So we have we kind of blocked for the first half hour to be very flexible.
Okay, sure.
And then to updating that hopefully from 8:30 and especially by 9.
Yep.
Good here now, but then what I thought would be. Then we'll finish up in this. Yeah, it's fine. Now, that's such a journey. Okay, now we're sitting in. I guess it gets real.
Belum bayar lagi deh. Oh ya, Mas.
Yeah.
Gimana? Oh iya, lupa buat cat. Saya harusnya bayar. Nanti gua kasih.
No, it's that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oke guys, thank you. Ya. Thank you, Jeremy. Kalau tahu sih.
Iya, silakan.
Oh, bindeng ya. Mana pegang main. Oh ya. Oh, ya. Apa yang ada tempat kita?
Yeah, so you'll be here just for the morning? Yes. Okay, and then back here.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. And then would you be here tomorrow morning as well? Yeah. Okay. Maybe about 9?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I have no meeting with
Oh, okay, okay. Very good, thanks. Are you on money? You're not. What's that? Yeah, so they'll be here in the morning, and then on the line. That's your audience. Tuesday. Morning until lunch.
You got mine already, okay.
So, like, they have meetings about tea and breakfast, that whole, morning. Yeah, there's a different group coming in, but not until after that, they get some of the planning, yes, we need to. Yeah.
Oh, iya.
Yeah, so depending on the.
I know.
Okay.
Just that one.
Hello.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. That's it. Okay, what are we?
Belum. Belum balik.
Breakfast. And that's okay. And then how to lunch in one, and then that's the second, down, how long it is, 15. Yeah. I thought it was.
Kayaknya masalah kan no, right. Soalnya ya, kayaknya ya yang
I'm just thinking we're like very far from me to. Is this slow? You mind just putting it in? Oh, yeah, let's try it. Oh, no.
okay.
Ini masih.
Full parts and maybe before.
Oh, okay, fair.
Just kidding. That's not really working. I'm sure it's, micros, that box for some.
Ini input yang di sini kali ya?
Iya. Should there be anything else coming remotely?
I think there will be some people.
Ideally for this morning, some of what we covered is needed for the rest of this session.
Yeah.
So we'll try, moving forward, we'll try to avoid be doing it at the beginning of some sessions, but as we get new people coming in the afternoon, probably. So I have to do like a slide introduction for each of those sessions. We figured we'll see how things go today and then we'll adjust.
Yeah.
Mine is just.
It's gonna be choppy.
Is it working? It's not working. Okay. So one of these, one good thing. I'll move stuff. Is that it? Let's enjoy.
You're getting.
Okay. Okay. They're gonna- See one. Oh, yeah. The broadband one, I'm getting like half of our comes and goes. Sometimes it's there, and sometimes it's not.
So you happen to have like any background.
Yeah. I think it's not. I sell on Feather. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you.
Okay.
Kan itu doang.
That's one. Okay. So. So we.
Actually, just search about this 1% of the students. Oh, yeah, it is. No, I'm just saying, it's pretty sure.
I didn't see that one. Dude. I saw it.
Yeah, that one's working. I didn't want-
Oh, yeah.
It's just like
Tadi pakai wifi crossnya kan, timbul tenggelam. Coba pakai kan sih bisa.
Yeah, mine is pretty good too. So,
Aduh.
and I'm gonna get off for that too. Like, if it also comes up on the other one. Is that?
that one is. But mine is.
If I'm not invited, I yeah.
Tak bisa. Coba bentar deh. Oke.
Kita berharap seperti
Udah mati ya.
ini.
Tidak.
I'm looking for the house, which is the this one. Yeah, but only one. Yeah. You have that. Yeah. Although it's not nice. Or fast.
Bisa kok.
Bisa.
Sifatnya yang enggak sih sifatnya saya
Oke.
No, your logo's kind of jacked up. It's great.
bisa.
I think we're pretty close already. That's both of them. Yeah. I don't know, so we'll start with. Udah ada. Introduction, yeah, we're starting with engineering.
So since the parents area that they asked whether we can start with engineering first and then go to the defense. Sorry.
Yeah, the morning, we'll start with an introduction and the introduction into the platform because how the platform works for everyone, like that will kind of carry over into all of the stocking stuff. So the first hour will be more about the IFS platform and then we'll get into straight into the dots of engineering. They'll cover engineering for most of the morning. And then we're planning on covering edits coming back from lunch and then getting into line I think it might be something like that.
Okay.
And the only thing maybe that we would ask, within the broader group is a little bit of, support for each other. Because for example, when we get to planning, there's some things there that really are defined and set up in engineering. So, but we won't be able to go through them a second time. So, if the engineering folks see that and see that capability or able to share that with the planning folks, that understand. Kind of the overall flow. Yeah.
Boleh mulai Pak? Oh, boleh. Let me open this first and then pass on. Oke, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Oke, terima kasih untuk Bapak Ibu sekalian sudah meluangkan waktunya to attending this our third time to do to have our friends from IFS to do the demo presentation. And since this is one of the activities from our ERP assessment done by GMF and also Deloitte, we would like to see the IFS information and also the team and the capability to fit the requirement that we already get beforehand. So hopefully we'll have some productive sessions. So just after so our IFS guy will present the demo presentation first, and then you might ask the question. And we try to squeeze. I know there are a lot of topics, but we try to squeeze to have a meaningful conversation and also the discussion with all of GMF team for the next 2 days. Okay. So without further ado, pass over to you, Matt.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hi, so I'm Matt. I'm with IFS based in Singapore. As Dina just mentioned, we have a lot that we're covering within the next 2 days. So when we saw the agenda for the week, normally this would be a full week of engagement for us, about 5 days of kind of trying to combat that. And so we want to keep it interactive, and we want to be aware where you have concerns or where you have feedback within the system. We'll do our best to answer questions as we go through it if we can. We'll also be documenting all of the questions that we get. So one of the potential outcomes for this would be us sharing answers to the questions after the session so that we can try to stay on time as we go through it. So for the next 30 minutes to an hour.
Can you join the Teams because it's not.
Just
Okay.
what? Okay, so to go to your HDMI. It's basically very cool. Yeah, every time you touch it, it's happy. Are you seeing my screen in the Teams?
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
And then what can we do to get me on the projector? How do I switch this over, Magesh, so that it's going to show my. No, so so that we're showing the.
Yeah, I know. Next time it should only show your. I mean, this is your view and they will have a different view.
It's not working. Give me a second. Why don't we try to connect it directly? You want to do that? Can I?
Directly, we go before even a little bit of drop out. That's why I gave him that, but.
I think it must be the cable itself.
It worked. See?
CHG might do this.
Hold on, that worked too. I got you. I'm sharing my screen, so can we get this?
Yeah, that it should be a different view then. Like, the you would have access to almost the one.
But I don't want that because I'm sharing my screen, so I want both to be on presentation.
It's not that we might need a different answer from the cable is not happy. Every time you touch it.
And
How much complicated?
And we thought like we did before, but we put an oven under instead. And so it's now going to USB-C, but still, if you wiggle the cord, if it moves, you can see it's kind of like cycles as it cuts out.
Like it did.
What is this? I don't need that.
It's working now, but I need to hold it as a see if I please stay a little bit at most. Connections. I need to connect directly. Let's just.
That is.
It's recognized there.
Right?
Right. We try to, it is me.
Okay.
Go to the separate top page. Top page.
It's,
No.
No,
no, it came off this. Oh no, we just all tap it. Yeah.
it was but
Hey, why is this one not showing?
that's the presentations.
This is an extent. Yeah, that's fine.
There we go. All right,
Really sorry.
all good, all good. All right, we're at 8:34.
11 minutes and we're still on time.
I'm on time.
This morning we're going to
Uh,
an introduction to IFS.
We're into IFS and the platform. At around 9:30, we'll start to shift into engineering.
Closer to 9:30, starting to deep dive into engineering. We'll break for
Closer to 9:30.
And we're going to try to keep that 15 minutes. And
30 minutes, and then a lunch break from noon to 1. As of right now, the plan is to come back at 1 for defense, and then get into hangar and line maintenance management. We'll move
15-minute break from 3 to 3:15. Finish up and
finish up hangar and line maintenance, and then we'll try to wrap around 3:45 to open up time for additional feedback and questions.
As you have questions throughout the session, please feel
Mentioned
free to
earlier, as you have
take questions and feedback. Most of them will be answered after
most of them will be
the
answered
session, either by email, after the week report. or-
after the week report, or we can set up another call if time permits.
Going into tomorrow, we're going to start with the engine shop in the morning. This usually is about a 3-day session that we would run, so we're shrinking that 3-day session down into about 2 hours. So 8 to 10 will be engine shop.
8 to 10 will be engine shop. Similar to today, we'll have a 15-minute break from 10 to 10:15.
Break, and for lunch, and then back in at
Right.
1 p.m. we start with finance, human resources, we're doing capacity planning. We do have some time plans for industrial gas and turbines. The difficulty here again is seeing how things go throughout today and where we're at leading into tomorrow.
And
we did leave 45
that-
minutes for a longer time tomorrow.
On-
Q&A.
45 minutes.
There. So I did want to start off first with introductions, just to get to know our team a little bit better. So my name's Matt, I'm based in Singapore. I'm responsible for the IFS, aerospace and defense, customer relationships for all of Asia. With me are Magesh and Johnny, also from our Singapore office. They're our solution architects for Asia, Middle East, Australia, and New Zealand. And then from our global team, we have Karan and Jeremy. They're our global solution architects within aerospace and defense. And from our partner Tsunami, we have Andrew. I wanted to bring him in for this session because if we were to move through to an implementation, Tsunami would be a big part of that journey with the support of our implementation services, and they have deep relationships with a lot of our customers in the region. So we want to make sure that we have time moving throughout the process and throughout the relationship. Can you guys just quickly do a quick introduction?
Okay, hi, I'm Mahesh. I manage AMD pre-sales for APJ. Been in the aerospace and defense industry for more than 25 years now. Worked with a lot of MRO firms and engine MROs and FM MROs. I've had experience of working in the Air Force as well, so deep understanding of defense MRO as well. So happy to be here and work with the team to present this overall view.
Jeremy Green, home is near Toronto, Canada. Been with IFS for just coming up on 10 years. I've been working in this space for about 18 years now. Also for a different software company previously, with a short stint in between where I was a project manager at a third-party MRO. So, welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Johnny. I'm EV name to remember. So I'm a senior pre-sales consultant for IFS, working with IFS for 4 years, based in Singapore. Earlier to that, I started my career in an airline as a production planning engineer for Camel, then shifted to MRO, worked with MRO customers for almost 20 years before I come to IFS. So working with the APJ team, happy to meet you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Karan. I am based in the US. I am with the global AV pre-sales team and I specialize in supply chain.
Morning everyone, I'm Andrew, Managing Director covering Asia Pacific and Middle East. I've been in that role for about 5 years where I'm the sales and implementation partner. Prior to that, I had about 20 years with IFS in pre-sales and implementation, so IFS one way through.
All right, from an IFS standpoint, I'm not sure how familiar everyone in the room is with IFS as a company. So the first thing that I wanted to point out about the company itself is we only participate in highly compliant, asset-intensive industries. So anywhere where there's high regulation and safety is the number one priority is an area that IFS plays very well. Specifically within Asia, we are completely focused on the aerospace and defense industries. That for us revolves around helping companies manage how they build, operate, maintain, and support their assets. So everything starts with the assets. We are very well positioned to support organizations like GMF as you go through a business changing journey. So what GMF looks like today is very different from what it looked like 5 years ago. What it's going to look like 5 years from now could also be very different in terms of the types of businesses they play. We work with a lot of organizations very similar to yours, as well as companies that focus on specific areas of your business. So in an engagement like this, we understand that we're relating to the air operations side, specifically, obviously, the MRO. There's parts of manufacturing and defense contracts. Last pertinent here is the defense forces, but there is an opportunity if there's a need for it within the aviation support services and assets within things like airports that would become a part of your operations. A good example, I think, is we saw in the news a few years ago, there were potential plans to make changes with the engine shop. That's something that we could support if the engine shop were on its own or as it's part of GMF. So there's those changing business requirements and the changing way that you're going to market. We are very well suited to support that adaptation.
The way that we do that obviously is through software, and there's two major components to our software that help us support organizations like yours. Number one is the out-of-the-box functionality that is just built for businesses like yours and the different parts of your organization. The goal here is to have something that's ready for you to use that does not require custom-built solutions or other systems that are part of your core operations that we need to integrate with. We want to be able to manage all of your core operations under one platform. The secondary part of that and a major investment over the last 5 years was IFS getting all of its functionality under one next generation platform. And that's what we're going to spend the first part of this morning covering, is always making sure that you have complete control over what happens within the business and within the system. But you also have the ability to have the flexibility to make changes to it as you see fit, as the requirements change. And the whole goal there is maintaining control, but allowing your teams to be as efficient as possible. So things that in other solutions might require customization can be done on the fly within IFS to make your teams more effective. In a typical engagement, what we try to do is align with you on where your biggest priorities are right now. In this situation, obviously, we're working with Deloitte, so Deloitte's gone in and done that pre-work to get an understanding of your requirements from an ERP standpoint. And we'll be working and collaborating with them to identify how we can help contribute to the end goals for a project like this. And in our customer engagements, this is the type of data that we keep track of to identify how we're thinking out the value that we bring to a customer like GMF. From a customer standpoint, we have a lot of examples globally where we work with similar companies, both on the airline, on the MRO side, and on the engine shop. So we've got a few key logos here. Most importantly, currently, we're in projects with China Airlines, Qantas, and we recently started implementing at JAL. And the timing of those projects is working out perfectly, where we'll be in the middle part and have our resources freed up for the timing of the GMF project if we are selected to move forward with you. So this is one key area that we're hoping to go through is in the near future. These would be 4 primary good examples of really strong collaboration with customers if we were successful, obviously, in this engagement. The other 3 right now. So hopefully that gets you up to speed a little bit about how we think about this market, this industry, organizations like yours, and I'm going to give it over to Jeremy to get us into the actual platform so you get a feel for how the platform works within IFS. Any questions before we move into that? This did goes over to 90 and we're going to start to the IFS cloud introduction.
Oh iya, pakai broadband ya. Iya, gue juga kadang-kadang atau makanya gue pakai counter.
Configuration.
Oh iya,
Yes.
ya.
Yes, it was.
Tapi ada tugasnya colongan.
Maybe he's going to be trying to figure out where you guys are going to do this.
And spawn like this. You know, just
Iya, nanti pakai yang belakang aja. Pakai masih pakai belakang aja. Ah, pakai yang belakang.
Oh, apa? Wi-Fi-nya?
Pokoknya.
Oh, powernya ada.
Gimana? Sebenarnya dulu.
Yang itu kan nyala Bang.
Yang ini.
Aku ada. From time perspective, you went to start 19. So I think by the time they are setting it up, I'll just probably briefly reintroduce myself. I think in case you look at my name, it's Mahesh. I manage A&D pre-sales for all our customers in the aerospace and defense domain, specifically for customers across APJ. That's like from the Middle East, Japan, to Asia, Pacific, all the countries, and to ANZ. So some of the customers that you saw there on when Matt presented are some of the customers we directly support in terms of solution architecture, in terms of the platform, in terms of their overall journey in terms of adopting the IFS solution. So with that, my intent here is to give you a trailer of the movie that's going to come up in the next 2 days. So you probably get a teaser of what we're trying to present, why IFS as a solution and as a platform makes the best fit case for GMF. Knowing your company, knowing that you are like a flagship or a flag airline of Indonesia, and how we as IFS are resoundingly working with a lot of flag carriers, all the logos that you're seeing, like Qantas, Air France, KLM, and would cover those aspects in greater detail without much ado. So this is IFS, not trying to overwhelm you, because we are a ERP, EAM, and enterprise service management platform. So we do complete enterprise level asset management capabilities, complete resource planning, maintenance, overall capabilities, and we also have service management capabilities. So if you look at any typical ERP solution, whatever capabilities you need, including core finance, core HR, sales, core sales, complete CRM capabilities, all those capabilities, we would typically pick a set of modules and solution sets that are specifically catering to your business needs, and then we deliver it as part of the project. But what it also means, like Matt mentioned, if you expand into newer capabilities, like for example, you want to expand into greater level of manufacturing, we just open up those modules and you're able to tap. It is not, implementing new software, new customization. No, it's all in the same software. All we need is to get license to those modules. Now, going further, now typically as IFS, we always have 5 key messages or 5 important things as to why IFS makes the best sense. We call them like the 5-finger pitch. So one, we come across with industry depth. So like Matt mentioned, we are very focused in terms of verticals. Though we are a massive ERP platform, we don't focus on all the industries globally. We pick and choose on the industries we operate and pick and choose the customers we want to work with. Now, aerospace and defense is a very, very key focus industry for us. Close to 30% of our customers and the global revenue that IFS generates today, being a $1 billion company, comes from aerospace and defense customers. Now, the second aspect that we bring in is that we bring one single product. That's IFS Cloud. You don't look at 6 different products to choose from. You buy one product or one platform, and within that, we provide you all capabilities. So you as a company, as an IT team, when you invest and buy a product, you're not learning 3 different platforms, but rather one single platform. Third, being the architecture that we bring, which is absolutely the latest generation technologies, we have innovation embedded, being based on open APIs, container-based architecture, using a browser-based interface, which you will all see in the upcoming sessions. We are easily in a state where we can embed innovation. Recently, IFS, we acquired companies in the AI space, in the agentic AI space. Now, what does that mean? Because the platform is so innovation capable, we can bring in more modern technologies. So if there is a modern technology in terms of bringing an agentic solution to automate process with AI, absolutely yes, IFS is ready. You don't need to replace, you don't need to bring in additional solutions to get that capability. IFS has that platform to give you that capability. Fourth, most important of all, compared to legacy platforms like SAP and others, we have one single platform which works exactly the same, whether it is deployed on your on-premise or on cloud. And we also support a fully managed cloud offering, meaning IFS manages the entire cloud instance, or we can work with you if you have a cloud of your own. Like, you have like customers like Qantas, they have AWS cloud, and we deploy it on their cloud. So we offer that as well, and the product, the experience is exactly the same again. Now, most important of all, as you see in the upcoming presentations, we really focus on user experience. The way in which the platform has been built and built to deliver is basically give you a delightful user experience, clicking through the screens, looking at shortcuts, looking at bookmarks, how you quickly navigate, look at the value experience that the logins offer. You would see that. Remember these words that I'm saying, because you will hear a lot of these words. How it helps you quickly like and love a solution. That's where the delightful experience comes in. So these are the 5. Now I quickly go in and tell you about some key aspects about it, but I'm not going to cover in much detail. We spoke about tech stack and me telling you that we are coming with the latest generation technology. What is that? That is what we call as a layered application architecture. May have been there with some platforms, but IFS is built to the core with that. So what does that mean? We separate the product itself into multiple layers. So at one level, we start with the personalization layer, the configuration layer, and then comes the next level, which is like your customization, the core product, and finally the platform itself. So what does that mean? You end up having capabilities like, you can do faster patching, you can do easier adoption of latest gen tech, as I told you, and there is consistency across. Now, I'm not going to get into more details here, just trying to focus on that time, but I'm absolutely available this entire next 2 days, and I'm happy to sit with your IT team to explain it in more detail where required. Now, most important of all, I keep telling you about IFS as a platform that you invest in and take it forward, right? One of the key motives that IFS is today offering to customers since we launched our product IFS Cloud in 2022 is that we are trying to give an evergreen platform, pretty much in the lines of what SaaS products do today. So basically, like you signing up to Office 365. There is no further release, right? It's only Office 365. All the release and version updates are within Office 365. That's exactly how we operate. So basically, you get IFS Cloud as a platform, and IFS delivers to you and helps you keep abreast of the most recent version of the product. And this we don't do in a one-way mechanism. We work with your IT team with the way in which you have deployed the solution and with your want and desire to update it. Now, there are ways in which you need to be in the latest and supported version. We will cover that again separately. But what it literally means is every year we have 2 releases of the product. 2 releases in which the functional capabilities are upgraded and updated. Now, how do those come in? That comes in the basis of customer feedback, in terms of industry feedback, and we ourselves adopting new technologies. Like we start building AI capabilities in our product, and we want to release these capabilities to the customers. How do we release it? In these 2 releases, right? And you as an end customer can decide, okay, this makes perfect sense to me. And then you can add it on, and you take care of just opening up those license modules with additional subscription. Just give me a minute. second point. Qualities.
Okay.
Okay, so what that literally means is that you are having an evergreen platform, a platform that doesn't go out of support, a platform that is not like legacy at any point of time. You're always evergreen, and that's the approach we want to take for every customer of ours. Now, there will be steps to do this. My colleague Jeremy will cover some of this in more detail. So what we believe is, at the core, there is application logic, which very rarely we would have customers touch up or improve on, but the core remains separated and supported by a company in terms of the future releases. You as the end customer have complete capabilities to configure. We will try to touch on what literally configuration needs. And finally, you can have personalization as well. Like as an end user, every user has a capability to personalize his experience. So that's what we call the 4-step approach. So for example, if you take a case of personalizing, as a customer who's logging into the system, you would want to have a particular layout of columns. You would want one column to come in front and back, very simple things, right? But also you would want to subscribe to certain work orders, get alerts and tracking information on particular orders. You would want to have a dashboard or a login page of yourself because you would track certain KPIs which others user may not, right? So that level of personalization at each end user level is available in the product. Now at the second level, as an IT team, as a company who's pushing the solution across the overall GMF landscape, you can do a lot of configurations. You can configure your appearance, you can configure fields, you can design pages, you can design layouts, you can create workflows like automated approval workflows and stuff like that. Approval workflows to call data, push data, all those sort of actions can be configured within the product again. Now, also extend. We give you access to a developer portal and you can start building features on top of it. We will come to that in a little bit more detail with my colleague. And also based on our capability, we can extend on this side because we work with open APIs. It's easier for you to expand with external platforms like Salesforce. If you want to have a connector, you want to connect with something like a Power Apps. Absolutely, yes. The system works seamlessly to bring in data from external platforms as well. So I think I touched this briefly in terms of what core configuration is. Well, please skip that. I know some of these would be covered by my colleague in terms of hooking up and stuff. I just have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to skip this for the one more time. So this one screen which I want to probably touch upon, which Jeremy will show in more detail. Like you can see, right, at the screen level, what configuration, when I say your IT team can do, that is a standard business screen from IFS. But you as a team, within GMF, you can set certain fields to mandatory, absolutely yes. You can change field labels because the terminology that we use and the terminology you may use may be different. Our system absolutely enables you to do that. Oh, God. Yes.
Meanwhile, if there is any question, just let us know. So we'll be happy to answer either online or you could ask us directly.
Okay, sorry, some spontaneous. So similarly, you can name the steps, you can configure a lot of things here. I'm going to quickly skip through. Just continue to the last part, like branding, personal. We'll cover all of that, in detail if you want to have separate sessions. I'll just conclude it with one more aspect. Okay, so why does this all make perfect sense to you, right? Like, because knowing that you have been working with the legacy platform for so long, you would have a lot of in-house expertise, right? Now we want to build upon that. So what our platform offers to you is one, you can innovate on top of it. Absolutely, yes. We empower you and you can empower your end users. And most important of all, we assure you, right? And we want you to have access to the latest technologies, control over the exact system that you have in your hand, and also deliver whatever the next features that you want to release to the customer. So with that, probably I'll close my presentation here and about my colleague, Jeremy, just on time. Okay.
Give us just a few minutes to get the.
Yeah. Just move it. It's one sheet.
Yeah, I was doing it, I was connecting things going through this.
Okay.
Could you please share the?
Oh, yes, it is. That's good call. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So part of what Mikesh just covered off there and gave you a little bit of a preview to is actually pretty critical to the capabilities of the platform that we're going to show you. So we are going to do a pretty high level view through the solution itself. So what we have as an out of the box solution for air operators, for independent MROs, for Part 145 that are tied to a CAM or part AM organization, engine shops, component shops, etc. But what we believe is critical to that is not just delivering an out of the box solution, but ensuring that the broader platform is going to support your business, is going to enable your users and really enable you as our customer to own your solution. But critically, with little or no customization for a variety of reasons. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit more about the platform before we dive into the solution pieces themselves. And I'll kind of tie that into why does it matter for you? What does that give you on top of what we're delivering you out of the box? So I will have, actually, I'm not going to start the slides. I'm going to actually dive into the software first, and then I'll come back to a couple, we'll start here first. So what we actually talking about with this layered architecture approach, just quickly, I think we have a mix of people in the room, right? We have some IT folks and the rest is engineering. Who is from IT? Just probably. So just a few. Oh, many. Sorry, my apologies. Okay, perfect. So And are you IT from a system support infrastructure network, or do you also have an in-house software development team? Do you make custom software today to solve particular solutions?
Yeah, we have enough into different application, we have a certain mobile.
Okay, and is that folks in this room, or is that a different team that does the actual software development?
Different,
Okay, and do they work for you guys, or under you, or in just alongside?
my team focus on SMB development, but if you want to develop website and mobile, then the fit business, maybe, yeah, we will look at them.
Okay. Perfect. I'm just trying to get an idea of what level of detail to provide you. We do have a mixed group, so I don't want to dive too deep into the technical piece, but again, I'll tie that together for why the folks from engineering care about what I'm going to talk about here for the first few minutes before we dive into the user interface. So what we have is this layered architecture approach, and it actually starts at that bottom with the foundation itself. We have two different development groups within IFS. We have our platform developers that actually create the IFS cloud platform. And I'll pause for one moment there, just in case anyone didn't catch that. Yes, the product is called IFS Cloud. It is not a cloud-only solution. You have the option of taking that as a managed cloud solution, or as an on-premise installation, or as something that you put into your own private cloud. What's important to go with that is it is exactly the same software, no matter where you choose to put it. So unlike some other systems, Oracle, for example, where Oracle Cloud is not the same software as Oracle on-prem, which means early on, if you decide you prefer to do on-premise, and then later you decide you want to move to managed cloud, it's just a lift and shift. It's not different software you have to re-implement. So these platform developers basically create the building blocks of the platform. And you can think of them like Lego bricks. They design the different shapes and colors and kinds of Lego bricks that exist in the platform. And then we have solution developers. And those are developers and product management teams that work within the different industries. So we have a group of product managers who are experts in the aerospace and defense industry specifically. And what they do is their developers take those Lego bricks and put them together in a specific way to deliver them to solve different problems. So the idea is the platform developers will give you the right set of bricks, and then you can put together a kit that says, here's how I build a house out of those particular pieces of bricks, or here's how I build an airplane or a car or whatever other shape that you want. And as we get looking at this, you'll kind of see where, why we separate those two layers out. The other really critical thing here is with that, we give you the ability to customize the software yourself if you choose. And the tool that you use to do that is the exact same tool that our solution developers are using. They are using that exact tool. Also very important, and I think for me, the biggest differentiator is that we move a significant portion of what most software calls customization into the configuration layer. And that makes it far quicker to make changes. It makes it far more supportable through the upgrade process, et cetera. So that's what I'm going to take a couple more minutes to talk about. So the extent on the inside is when you truly want to customize something. And if you want to do that customization, we have our own IDE. So it looks a lot like Visual Studio for the IT folks that are familiar with that. But it uses a low code, no code development language called Marble. And you can take and build your own pages, your own logic, whatever you want on top of the platform. You can override or extend the code that we've applied already. And this is exactly the same tool that our developers are using. And what happens is, as part of the build, when you're ready to produce that, if you do a customization, is it merges the changes that you made in with our base code. So you're not actually ever changing the IFS code itself. So that's one we could talk about more at some point if your developers want to kind of see what those options are. But why would you want this over true custom from scratch software? Because this is going to be within a supported platform. When new technologies, new libraries come out, security patches, anything like that. It's not up to your developers to have to go and find out what is the latest library and security patch. The platform is already incorporating that inherently. So it takes a lot of that overhead off of your development team and lets them just focus on creating the function they want to. But really more important is piece. And that's what we're actually going to look at. So I'm going to jump right into the user interface and show you some examples of that, because it really does quickly begin tying into a very common question that we get all the time. So I'm just going to log out for a moment so you can see sort of my starting point here. Yep. All right. So as a user, this is my typical login page. And the first thing to start with is we are an entirely web-based solution. We're also role-based. So each user has one or more roles that are assigned to that user. Those roles determine everything a user can do, what they can see, what they can access, what they can only view, what they can work with, what they can change or edit or create. It's extremely granular. You can actually get down to the individual fields on a page and control and see that field or whether they can interact with it. And again, that becomes get down to that level of detail is significant. In my case, for our demo throughout, I think I have all of today and maybe a little bit of tomorrow. I am going to be signed in as a super user, just so I'm not logging in and out. I'll try to tell you when I'm changing hats and I'm becoming a certain persona. But with that in mind, I have access to everything. So some of my screens will have a lot of options. You control all of that. You will determine what your users can and can't see and what they can and can't do. So where a user typically starts with is what we call a lobby. A lobby is like a dashboard. This lobby that I normally land on is one I use for demos. No user would ever have this lobby. This just gives me a starting point where I can dive down into all of the different business areas of the organization. But for example, if I went and said, okay, the outsourced heavy maintenance is one of the lobbies that I want to look at. This might be the home lobby for a production controller or your hangar maintenance crew leader, crew chief. We provide several hundred lobbies out of the box. And each of these blocks is what we call a lobby element. And there are several thousand lobby elements provided out of the box. If you have the appropriate permissions, and that's kind of almost everything I say, you could put that in front of that. If you have the appropriate permissions, I can very quickly edit this lobby. Let's say, for argument's sake, you like this setup, but you actually want to separate the production controller that's looking at this for your outsourced maintenance from the person that's looking at this for Garuda or CityLink aircraft. No problem. Right now, they're sharing a common lobby, but you want to add something that the in-house person shouldn't see. In effectively one click, I can duplicate this lobby, give it a new name. So I can come in and rename it and begin changing the elements. I now have two different versions of that, and I can change the permissions so that my third-party production controller and my Grid CityLink production controller are seeing different versions of that lobby. So the editing process is very simple. I can also, let's just say with this new user, they don't need any of this faults under review stuff that's in here. I can take that entire band out of there for that other user. It'll still be there on the original lobby that I had duplicated. And then, once I give it a moment to load, we'll see all of these thousands of lobby elements that are available out of the box and all different types. I'll just note a couple in particular, like the Power BI, so we can do an embedded Power BI report as part of the lobby itself. But adding a new item to this page is very simple. I'm just gonna pick a random one. I probably don't even have data for it, but if I wanted to add this element to the page, I simply click on it. It's now on the page. I can come here and say, well, this element is actually really, really important for this user. So let's make it the top thing on their page. It's the very first thing to appear. So now it's at the top. But it's not quite that important. So let's make it a little bit smaller. And I can make those changes. So reorganizing things, changing things like that, not only for getting you up and running, because you'll probably start with our lobbies, but they're never exactly what any customer wants, because every customer wants something a little bit different. But also as your business changes, you own this. You're able to do this yourself. You don't need IFS to come in and help you create new lobbies. Taking that one step further, just going to cancel out of this for a moment. You can create new lobby elements themselves from scratch very easily. And the level of technical knowledge is extremely low to be able to do that. So for example, if I go to my aircraft page, from this page, I can tell what the data is that drives the page itself. And with that little bit of information, and again, if I have the appropriate access in the system, I can go into what we call our lobby data source designer, create a new lobby element, and in this case, we'll just make it a new data source rather. We'll do that one first. Let's say I want aircraft that are currently in an archive status. I can see what are the attributes of the aircraft. Let's grab the aircraft description, and I'm pretty sure I have the status in here somewhere, or condition, I think it's called. Here we go. So those are the only two values we're going to collect. I can see what that looks like. Here's some examples. And for whatever reason, I want a count of archived aircraft. Maintenance controller engineering has said we don't really work with them, but on our page, we just want to counter so we know how many archived aircraft are sitting in our fleet. And I'll notice if that changes. No problem. IFS didn't give you a lobby element that counts archived aircraft. That's one we didn't create. But I can come in here and say, for my typing skills here. Okay, yeah, that's right. So, and I can preview it again and make sure it's working. There we go. Save that. I really should have named it something better like archived aircraft, but get the idea. Now that I've done that, I can go into my element designer. And I mentioned all those different types that we have. I can grab a counter. I'll call this archived aircraft, just to make it a little more intuitive. Archived aircraft, set the color profile. I'm sure you've seen already as I logged in that you can set up appearances. So we went through and grabbed your logo and your colors and put it on here, but you can configure that based on different personas and different locations. So if you were doing third-party work for another customer and you just wanted them to see their logo and their colors on the screen, you can set up where when a user is at that location, the appearance design is actually different. So in this case, to set that up, we're going to use that data source that we just created. I don't really care which column because we're just going to do a count. I can preview it. I have 14. I can save it. It was called archived aircraft. And now if I jump back to my starting page, any starting page, let's just drop this in engineering since that's what I mentioned. I can edit that lobby vendor, they get back to you in a week and a half with a quote. You take 3 weeks to approve it and send them a PO. They take 6 months to develop and deliver it. Then it's going to be 6 more months till you actually take the upgrade. You finally get it a year and a half later, and you're going to pay for it forever because that software vendor has to test it with every single release. In this case, I described what I was doing as I went through it. Obviously, I'm pretty familiar with it. I can create new lobby elements on counters in under 2 minutes. And there's all kinds of other attributes that can be added to that. Things like, again, filtering by company, by site, by all different criteria. And you, as the person creating this, the lobbies themselves can have attributes on them, parameters. Get out of edit mode here. What's here? Let's try this one. So the pages can have parameters, and those parameters can be defined as either editable by the user, so it just defaults to my location. That way I don't have to do that, but I'm free to change it. Or the person, whoever has the responsibility for this, whether it's a business process owner or IT, you can actually just bind that value and make it not editable by the end user and hide it from them. So again, what that means is you can use the same lobby for a technician at multiple different sites and prevent them from seeing data for any other site than their own. Or let them change it, whatever you want to do. The second reason that I'm spending a little more time on this is we don't try to produce every dashboard and every report and every piece of visibility that every one of our customers could ever ask for. That's simply impossible. So inevitably you're going to say, hey, can I see this? And frequently the answer is yes. If we don't already have it, you can easily make that so that you can see that. All of these changes, depending on what the exact change is, more from an IT perspective, we have update analyzers. They're tools that are designed into the box for you. When you take an update in your pre-production environment, that analyzer will highlight where you have made changes, and if we've made changes that where they overlap or they conflict, so that you can resolve those before upgrading your production environment. So it's not up to you to just guess or go and test everything that you've done. We have analyzers for lobbies, for configured fields, for customizations that you do, et cetera, that really help that process along. The last kind of configuration piece I'm going to show, and then the rest of the user experience stuff, instead of doing it in a dedicated piece, I'm going to talk about it sort of as I go through, and I'll highlight those. The one main big one is fields. That's a really common ask. So again, I'm going to go back to my aircraft page. And when you look at the attributes that are available for an aircraft, again, it doesn't matter how many we would put in there. There would always be a customer somewhere who says, but I need one more that you didn't create. And again, in traditional software, that's a customization and it's a whole big process. If you have the appropriate permissions, I can look at this page again and tell the entity, which is sort of our name that sort of describes the data set that drives the page. And with the right permissions, I can go into our entity configuration. I can go look at that aircraft entity. Here it is. This is telling me everything about the data set that's driving it under the hood. So what views there, sorry, my apologies. This is the configuration. If I went to the entity, it would be telling me everything that is there out of the box. But in this case, I want to actually do a configuration against that aircraft entity. So in this case, let's say that you have a marketing campaign going on and you've repainted a couple of aircraft in a specific livery. And your flight ops folks say, well, we want to make sure that we're routing those aircraft to our target marketing cities. Your flight ops system is always integrated to your maintenance engineering, maintenance planning system. But right now they don't see that. So they say, hey, it'd be great if when we're getting aircraft info sent through to our flight planning system, if the current livery on that aircraft was included in that message. So we know what livery is on the aircraft and we can tail plan accordingly. No problem. It's going to be a persistent field, meaning the user can enter a value. There's a variety of different options again here, read only, different formatting, different data types. I'm not going to go through all of that today. My goal here is really just to show you how straightforward adding a field is. So I've created that field here, livery, it's approved. I'm going to go ahead and publish or synchronize. In this case, because I already have one published, it's synchronizing. Again, for the IT folks, what this is doing under the hood is actually building out the data structure and all the key references, all the API calls. I'll show you on this. This is extending the open API model for the aircraft entity. So when I talked about your flight ops system wanting to get this, and I'll pop it up for you in a moment, when you go look at the spec for calling the aircraft messages, this field is going to be so it's a relatively straightforward process to go and add an additional field to whatever message broker you're using that is getting and sending aircraft flight information back and forth between the two systems. So now that I've added it to that entity, if I go back to my aircraft page, I can now, again, if I have permission, use our page designer to go into the aircraft list, and you'll see here all the content that's currently being shown, all the different fields. But driving off of that entity, I will now have a new field available, which is this livery field. And we prefix it with configured field livery. So I'm going to relabel that livery. And I'll say publish that change. And now what we'll see is, as an available column, here is that livery. Let's throw it all the way up to the top. So it's the first column we see, and I can go ahead and let's edit that first aircraft and go, I don't know, I'm just going to call it marketing 1 and save that. So, pardon my bad typing. So, again, we get this asked all the time. Can I add a field? Can I add a field? And this will come up probably, even this high level overview. The answer is yes. Always yes. No matter what field you're asking about, no matter where you're trying to put it, the answer is yes. You need to add a field. It's, you know, again, even describing what I did, that took me, what, probably 3 minutes or so to add it, to create a new field and add it to the page. And then what I was talking about from the integration point, it's more for the IT folks, we are an open API architecture, meaning every single data point, everything is accessible by an API. Every page, every field, everything there is in the system can be accessed via API. So if I go find that aircraft handling API, and I go look at the API spec for it, so there's the aircraft set. We'll see the call at the endpoint where the service lives for the API, what the payload looks like. But as I come in and look at the, let's say, get so get entity or the entity set, and here you can see there's that livery field is now one of the attributes that's available through the API endpoint for aircraft. So technical side for the IT folks, this is really the same answer for engineering. Again, why do you care? Why does this matter to you? For the same reason that lobbies do. Inevitably, you're going to come up with something and say, well, we need a field that's not there. Now, instead of it taking months in a big production and dealing with a vendor to get that, you will have people in your own organization who are capable of delivering that in, it's never going to be 3 minutes. That's not how it's actually going to work. They'll do this in your pre-production environment. Everything you see me do, we have import-export capabilities for. So if you build this in pre-production and test it, make sure you're happy with it, you don't rebuild it in prod, you actually export it into, it's basically just a zip file. And then you import it into prod and it's ready to go. So for the engineering folks, it's not really going to be 3 minutes, but it's not going to be a year and a half. Your total delivery time on something like a new field could be hours or a day or two instead of what you probably have, which is a much longer period of time. And critically, also for engineering, because this is a configuration, not a customization, this has nearly zero impact on the upgrade process. So when you're waiting for the latest feature that you'd really like to use, your IT department isn't blocked from taking that upgrade because they have, 3,000 customizations to test. These have very, very low impact on the upgrade process. Okay, there's a ton more from a configuration perspective and automations and workflows and events triggering automatic downstream activities, things like that. We can't go through all that now, but this really is just scratching the surface of that capability. My goal here really was to highlight why you're not just selecting a solution. Like, sure, you're going to look at work packages in a minute. We're going to talk about defining part requirements and part interchangeability, all that stuff that our solution developers put together. But this platform is really the difference in a lot of cases between a true out of the box solution and something that will work specifically for what you are doing, because every operator is a bit different. And the fact that you're doing your own commercial for airlines that you're tightly coupled to, plus you're doing independent third-party line and hangar and defense, and from what I understand, turbine engines in the field for power generation. What you need is going to be different than anyone else. So our out-of-the-box solution is going to get you 90 or 95% of the way there. And you're going to be able to add the things that you need without that being a big, expensive, and cumbersome customization. Okay, any questions on that?
Questions on platform flexibility? We can view, can't view, can do, can't do.
If we create like fuel or create like parameters, if you set in the special table or you doing the IFS parameter.
I'm sorry.
If we create parameter, new parameter like you expect, new parameter you define field name.
Oh,
if we put in the basic table or
oh,
use
so I highlighted kind of the layered architecture there. So that field that I did there is a configuration that lives in your environment and in your environment only. It actually didn't change, other than the database model, it didn't change any code in the software. But only you, no other customer is going to see that. This is your instance only. And even if you do a customization, that gets built into the delivery that you take, but it is only yours. No other customers are seeing that, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
If you come to us and say, hey, we don't want to do this, here's something we think all your customers would love, that's what you should be doing, then yes, of course, we would develop that and that would be available to everyone. And that's where kind of Miguel was highlighting, we have a twice annual release, one in the spring and one in the fall. That's when all the new features and capabilities are released. And then we have regular service updates that are usually limited to just the security patches, bug fixes, things like that. So the features are once in the spring, once in
the basic is SAS for premise the application.
what is your option you need?
No, it should prefer to us is SAS
So
or
the product is the same, no matter how you deploy it, but you do have the option to deploy it on-prem, or you can deploy it on cloud, or we can do a managed cloud service for you. So there's flexibility around the deployment, but the product, no matter what, is all the same.
And just to, for your knowledge here, this environment that I'm using, for example, is technically an on-prem, like a remote deployment, but it's in our private cloud. It's not a managed cloud solution. And even our managed cloud, any of them, they are single tenant only. So we don't do multi-tenant solutions.
Any other questions?
Okay. So I'm going to dive into the engineering piece here.
Thank you, so far, so we'll do a first introduction into the engineering now, in 1.5 hour, we'll be quick break, and we'll come back and sort of, you know, but we're just a little like with the technical difficulties and stuff, we're a little over time of it. And you like to repeat questions for the.
Nice one. Carry on.
So,
Yeah,
you just, show how to create executional feature in Node, right?
Yep.
And if we have new this process, so we have to create a process like create, and delete. So it is new this process. Can we do that?
for a new finishing process, you,
We have to this process that is not accommodated by IFS. So we have to create a custom process,
it's not process.
custom business process.
Okay, can you give a little example about, like, for us to understand what you're trying to say? Like, see, I mean, are you trying to say the sequence of steps that we follow? Like, say, for example, a purchase order creation. IFS follows step 1, step 2, step 3, but you want to change it to step 1, step 3, and then another step? Like that, something like that?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. You can do that as well. So what, all you're asking for is, that's the part that Jeremy wanted to cover in the business process automation. Like, for example, in IFS, if you go through this, say, contract, like a quote to cash process, and it involves you going through 5 different screens, with 10 different parameters entered. I'm just giving for an example, don't take it exactly. With automation, you can skip some of those steps. You may want to just put in default values and go ahead, or you may want to go through all the 10 screens. It's up to you. So that's the part we can work with your customer. So that's the part, your process, which is GMF specific, may involve only certain steps. The same process with some other customer may involve more or less steps. For each customer, we can configure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So for example, we create as list, but we want to add more additional approval
Oh, yes.
possible.
And ultimately, the easy answer to your question is just yes. But we do kind of want to give you a little better context, because ultimately, between Developer Studio, like a true customization that you can do, and configurations, there's almost nothing that you can't do. You can do almost anything. If I say everything, someone will come up with something that we can't do. But as a general rule, because you have access to those tools, almost anything you can come up with, yes, you can do it. And then the question becomes, did we already plan for that? So when you say approvals, we have approval workflows. You build, like, just through the UI, we have a page called approval workflows, and you define what is that approval workflow, what's it look like, what people and roles does it go to, what are the order, how many are they, and what does it attach to? When I'm creating a new task, this is the approval workflow. When I'm creating a new MPD item requirement, it goes through this one. I'm creating a PO, it goes through, like, those are all in the user interface already. So we have a lot of that flexibility that isn't even configuration, that's just system setup. And then if we didn't already have that for you, then configuration, like adding additional fields or eventually getting into the customization layer, you can still do that. And again, importantly, we could do it for you if you want, because you don't have to have us do it. You'll have that ability. If you already have a team of software developers, then, most organizations, that's where they would look to do that is have them shipped over to developing within that platform. So I know it's a bit of a longer answer, but the answer really just is yes. But I don't like just go yeah, like, because that's sort of, it sounds too easy, right? Just go, sure. But that's really the explanation around it. Okay. So what we're going to do is dive into engineering here. As Matt highlighted, this is a high level overview. There's no possible way I can go into all the detail for what we can do, what all the flows look like. My goal here is really just to give you confidence that this is what we do. And to be fair, engineering within our aviation or our IFS configuration maintenance, the ADBU configuration management is actually where we started. We still have some of the original folks that 30 years started working with the US Navy managing turbine engine configurations. That was like the ground start of that group. So, you know, engineering allowable config is what we did at the very, very beginning. So what I'm looking for here is just for you to take away that, yes, we see the overarching parts, we see the different kind of key capabilities. Now get down into, I see every field on every page, I understand how I can click through everything to do that, because we can't cover that in the time we have allocated. Okay, so where I'm gonna start, and what I've done here, again, just for the demo, I'm not gonna keep going back to lobbies each time. I've set myself up, so user experience, I can bookmark any page. I can add it into a bookmark or a group. I can color code it, I can relabel it, I can give it a different icon, etc. And that's what all these are down the side. I can pop that out and you can see I've bookmarked a bunch of pages that I'm going to use today as we go through stuff, just because I want to do it a bit quicker. So that's what I'm going to do as we go, is highlight a few of these usability things. All right. So what we're starting with is our fleet list. We sort of looked at this already. It's giving us basic aircraft information. So tail number, registration, current hours, cycles, the next port package, when it's scheduled, etc. What I want to really look at though is a particular tail number. So we're going to drill down into serial number 238. So we're now looking at a specific aircraft. And when I land on this page, the page gives me just some, basic information about the aircraft itself. Again, I'm not going to read through every field on every page. I'll probably highlight a couple of things I think are of value. But this is core information. A couple of things I will point out though in here, because I'm not going to be demonstrating it, but we have we can handle the difference between the owner and the operator, and importantly, you can change operators and therefore the maintenance program that is applicable to that aircraft. So from what I understand, at times, aircraft will transition from Garuda to CityLink. So today we have companies like, we have a cargo carrier in the US called ATSG. And there are actually 3 different business units. They do a lot of carrying for Amazon, but also one of the other freight work. They'll send aircraft out with UPS and things like that. But between those 3 legal entities, they switch legal operators, basically AOC, for those aircraft all the time. So they switch from one program to another, one operator to another frequently. And then just pure separation of fleets. Not only do they have, I think it's actually 4 entities. One doesn't change aircraft though, but also KLM Air France has been using our system for 15, 18 years, something like that, as 2 really their own fleets. They have single control, separate, segregate different operators, different companies, different sites, that level of detail. And the final example is Latam down in Brazil, and in Chile, they have 7 different legal entities. So in the system, they operate their models, they hold inventory that belongs to 7 different legal entities, etc. You know, a lot of organization kind of works from different roles, and something that we've been doing for years. So that's really on the aircraft details. And you'll see that on the side will be a change. We get down into subsystems, and ultimately when we get into actual what we call configuration slots for locations where components are actually installed and tracked. So early installed aircraft. That for one, just that and it remember the section go to the whole section because they will be all rolled up. So when I look at that inventory, we're tracking this as installed on a specific position. What you use inventory, we know where it's in. Just and well, how did you get how did we define what this aircraft would look like and what's allowed to be installed on it? That's where engineering is in. So let's jump to the next one. What I'm doing here, you were looking just because that's what we have on line, so we don't carry lots. This is engineering rules for all of the tails that we might end up with of that type, and how those rules apply. That's what we're going to be looking at here. So basic, here's the 737. This is what the assembly is. I'm going to drill down into the details of that assembly. Actually, my apologies, one moment. You actually want to go back here for a moment, because this hooks into something we're going to talk about later. We have different types of assemblies, and those assemblies ultimately are either aircraft assemblies or they are sub-assemblies of a few different types. And that can include engines. So here's JT8D engine. And what that allows you to do is actually define the allowable configuration of that sub-assembly independently. And then in the case of something like an engine, that engine will actually live on another assembly, which is the aircraft itself. Most of your components aren't going to be that way. We do have some landing gear that are set up in our demo environment. We don't recommend it for landing gear. It's mainly APUs, engines, and airframes. Again, engineering perspective, why do you care? Where this really comes into play as well for you guys somewhat uniquely is you can use this for your field engines. Is this the same engineering group that works with the turbine engines that are used for power generation?
It's different.
Sorry,
Different.
different? Okay.
Different.
Well, I guess so that you're aware, you can configure an engine assembly in here and they can manage those engines without them being allowed to be installed onto an aircraft. So they can have their own dedicated assembly, they can have looser configuration rules because those engines aren't flying, they can have a different maintenance program, different interchangeability rules, whatever they want. They can still use this construct to define how those engines in the field are put together and what parts do they need to keep track of on those engines. Without someone, ever applying that to an aircraft that's in operation. Okay, so now let's go back to our assembly. So this is the 737. Let's give us some real estate up here. And basic information, I'm going to come back to capabilities here in a little bit. Flight measurements, so what are the inputs that we take? Sorry, not flight measurements, but one here. Used to try that. So what are the inputs that we take? In this case, most of this is coming through an integration, and we're only tracking hours and cycles on this airframe. However, we can track anything. If I actually go back to the JT8D, for example, we can track thrust ratings. So there's numerous inputs, and those are just counter inputs. But you can then set up a mathematical formula that takes those inputs, does things like penalty multipliers, things like that. And then you can tell individual components or tasks, you should measure yourself against this computed value, not just flights or hours or cycles or anything like that. If I expand out the airframe structure, you'll see here, these sub-config slots are basically the system locations on the airframe. That's also what this is representing. Looks just like we saw with the aircraft earlier, except this is not an actual aircraft. This is just what is the definition of a 737 Classic for us? If I go into a system slot, for example, one of the things I can see in here is all of the requirements. And I'm going to come back to requirements a little bit more later, but a requirement is effectively your NPD items or MRB items or usually the engineering order that you create because of an AD or SP. The requirement is what do I need to do and what is the schedule and effectivity on that thing that I need to do. So here are all the requirements that live in chapter 26. If I keep drilling down, I can see that I can break that down further. I can put tasks into like 2620. You can be as granular as you want. You define what this structure looks like and how far down you want that to go. Are you going to go to chapter, section, subsection? Or are you going to leave things at just chapter, section? That's entirely up to you. But eventually, as we drill down, we get into what I was kind of highlighting earlier, which is these actual component slots. So here's our fire extinguisher and our squib. If I drill down into the fire extinguisher model and look at this, so it's describing the model itself. It's tracked, so this is something that we need to install. We're going to keep track of how much time it's accumulating. We have a part group, which I'll come back to in just a moment, defining what we can install. And when we look at subconfig slots, we see that there is a group of interchangeable parts that will be installed on it. And there will actually be, I thought I only had 2, but apparently I've got 4 on here. So there will actually be 4 squibs installed on each firewall. Just bear with me 1 second while I see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about when we're in here. Not really. Positions, you define all that structure. Yeah, okay. So drilling down a little bit more into the fire extinguisher model itself. I mentioned the part group. So in a given position, we have this concept of a part group, and it's basically an identifier to allow you to group potentially interchangeable part numbers, alternates. And I say potentially because just because it's in the list as an alternate doesn't mean that it is. Sorry, let me get back there 1 second. There. So, for example, we have all these part numbers in the system as parts that could possibly be interchangeable in the firewall position on this aircraft type. But we might have parts that are still in build status. Engineering is added in. A vendor said, hey, we have this alternate, that's what we're stocking now. You went, okay, I'm going to create that so we can get through the process of ordering it. But I still need to research. Does it have a different hydrostatic check interval on it? Are there any ADs or SPs? What are the applicability rules? So you need a mod before we can install it. So you can have a part that's still in build stage while engineering is going through and evaluating that part. You can also have obsolete parts. So because we have true cradle to grave traceability, nothing is ever deleted from the system. The part number can't just go away because you don't want to use it, but you can obsolete it and you can prevent it from being used moving forward. You can make sure that it's not going to be used any further, but you still have historical technical records that say it was in use in the past. And then critically, you get into the different rules that define, well, how can I use them? And this page is giving me just a few of the basics. And just bear with me 1 second. Oh, I know why that looks different. Sorry. Remember I said that I thought it was only supposed to be 2 squibs? You see I'm wearing glasses and the angle here is just a little borderline for me. My normal example is right here, is the APU fire extinguisher model, which is going to have the things I expected to see here, like only 2 squibs. I wondered how we suddenly got 4 on there that I wasn't expecting. And this part group has some better examples where you'll see that we have some obsolete and build parts. We have our applicability range, and this can be either a range or individual numbers. We have our interchangeability order. This is what allows you to define one-way or two-way interchangeability. So if I currently have, because remember, we know everything installed on the aircraft and we know everything that ever was installed on the aircraft in every single position. So if I currently have a 1 installed, I can only replace, I can replace it with a 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. If I'm currently flying a 4 on aircraft 247 and I need to replace it, I can only replace it with a 4 or higher. So this allows you to set up your one-way and two-way interchangeability of those parts. But that gets a little deeper yet into here in a second. Oh, maybe that next. Okay. Yeah. So allowable configuration. Yeah, so good.
Can we go deeper, like some component differential, one number, the amendment number, so we can track also.
Yep. So if I drill down into the part number, there's more attributes that I can count. And like always, if we don't have the attribute that you want, then we can add it, like you can add it. So I opened that part number in a new tab just so we don't lose where we were at. And again, I mean, there's numerous attributes, and because you can extend it, you can add more. So I'm not going to read through everything on here, but between everything that's covered in all of these different fields, there's whatever attributes that you want. And because the way the page designer and those attributes work, anything that's available there, you could then also make available in this grid if that's where you need to skip. So the column chooser is something that each user can configure. You saw me use it earlier, but I didn't really explain it. So right now, on that particular grid, these are the fields that we made available. But again, on the configuration side, you can easily go in, and this one just needs it on the page designer because the part info is already there. And you could say, hey, we want to see more columns on that grid. But yeah, this column chooser is per user, so it's what we call personalization, and it remembers what each individual user has set their view up as. Is that kind of way you're thinking? Yeah. So what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to shift for a minute from the allowable configuration of parts into the requirements, but we're 1 minute to break. So instead of like stopping a minute into that, now if it's all right, now's a good time, we'll break and then I'll move into the requirements when we come back. Okay. Start back here 11:15.
Mau
10.
break dulu. Break dulu. 15 kita masuk lagi. Yeah. Right, sure. Let's have a break.
Okay.
15 minutes.
Yeah. I think everything's been okay with it.
Yeah. It's okay because
the aircraft. It is in the airline or MRO.
So the aircraft configuration, that configuration happen to come from.
Neither. It's wherever, like, who does it is up to you. So if, maybe I'll make sure I understand the question right. Are you asking like a module you have to buy, or just what functional area are you in where you do those activities?
So actually is this presentation just now
Yep.
is
Yep.
the structure
Yeah.
of the aircraft component
Yes.
is detail which part number and serial number. In this data or the structure is put in the airline site or MRO site module in IFS.
Got it. So there sort of is an airline versus MRO module, but they are very tightly coupled. So that data would normally come from the airline side. The people doing it would be, excuse me, whoever has that responsibility, if you're a camo or part M or engineering or construction. You can allow really anyone to do it that you want to have that access. We're going to see some of this in work, but that allowable configuration carries down through execution for the MRO side because it is an all-in-one system. So if your question is, are you, when you're executing as the MRO for, let's say, Peru's aircraft, how, and your technician finds a fault and they need to change a part, how do they know what's allowed? That is inherently linked to the allowable configuration. So the system will go, oh, you're raising a fault on that aircraft. I know what, even though you're executing as the MRO, it is tied to the allowable configuration for that tail, and it will enforce some rules. That answer your question? Yeah, let's go through it, because I'm gonna touch on a few more pieces around that, and then we'll come back to that and see if I've answered your question or not. If I haven't, then I'll try to understand better what you're looking for.
Okay, maybe in the demo, we also visual your demonstration how we manage the planning as we serve the third party customer and we serve the group customer.
Yeah.
So the group customer, as you mentioned, here is we build a configuration at the first deliver of the aircraft, and we build the configuration, everything, such everything for the aircraft. But for the third party customer, we serve just like AirAsia.
Yeah.
This is the third party customer.
Yes.
We don't have the configuration.
Yeah.
Because they use for another IT.
Yeah.
MRO.
Yeah.
So we cannot connect as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So maybe
I'm gonna talk about that.
set up board of condition.
Absolutely. And I'm going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So jumping back into the engineering side, what we were looking at is at the template level, the allowable configuration for 737 Classic. And we're just defining what does the assembly structure look like? What are all the assemblies? What are all the systems? What does the component hierarchy look like? And within each component hierarchy, what are the potentially interchangeable part numbers and the rules around how those parts can be interchanged? There are a couple more rules that apply there, but I'm going to talk about those a little bit after. The second piece that we're going to look at is basically your MPD or MRB requirements for the aircraft itself. So let's come back to the aircraft. Yeah, we can keep going. Sorry, my apologies. I was looking at what I wanted to cover. I missed something earlier, but we'll come back around to it. Okay, so there was actually one additional thing. Our group. So we're talking about the part group and the interchangeable part numbers and some of the details there. But if we drill a little bit further into that group, there's also some additional rules that we can define with things like incompatibilities. So this allows you to manage two different things, both part-to-part incompatibilities. So in this case, when this part number is installed anywhere else on the aircraft, because I set it up as global versus specific position, then this part number cannot be installed at the same time. So those are the part-to-part incompatibilities. We also have a part-to-task incompatibility. I don't have these set up in here, but basically what it would show you is which task and what is the status of that task. Is the task being completed or not? What would you use this for? This is where you can model your pre and post body activity. So in this case here, we have these different. Up here, we have these different part number AV fire extinguisher models. 505 and 505-1. If we had an engineering order to do a mod for the bottle mount, once engineering has defined that mod, engineering can come in here and say, this part number is not applicable once that task has been executed. So in other words, once the mod is done, this part number is no longer applicable. And you can say that this part number is not applicable when that task is not yet executed. By you defining these rules in engineering up front, when that mod gets accomplished, so engineering will also put a schedule for the mod, or that you might make it on condition convenience, but eventually planning will put that in a work package. A technician will execute the work, and as soon as they say the work is executed, that changes in real time the allowable configuration of that tail. You're not relying on tech records to go in or engineering and change, like manually say, okay, that part can't be installed on that tail anymore, and now this one can. The system, because of the rules you've set up, knows that once that task is completed, you can no longer install the 505 part, and you can only install the 505-1 for example. So it takes a lot of risk away. It also means that those types of things apply to new aircraft. So when you author these things to begin with, and then you bring a new tail in, the system automatically cascades all these rules or applies all these rules to a new tail number. You don't sit there and go, yes, that applies, no, that doesn't, I don't know about that one. It's going to take the rules you wrote and automatically apply. And that's where we see on this applicability tab is the result of the rules that we put in place. Here is each individual tail number, and is it? I'm missing something here. What am I missing? There should have been a flag for whether it applies or not. We'll come back to that. Right. So moving to the requirements. Right. Before I dive into the requirements themselves, let's take a quick look at so already talked about this. This is your equipment baseline. Tied to that, you have for maintenance activities that are required. So what is the requirement? requirement more or less maps to MPD, MRB, and EO that you generate as a result of an AD or an SP or a mod that you want to accomplish. And generally what it has is the what is it, the when, the scheduling rules, and the applicability, what tips does it apply to. Each requirement normally will have, actually I'll cover this first, sorry. The requirements can be grouped into a maintenance program if you want to. You don't have to use that construct. For example, usually your engineering orders won't need a maintenance program. Even your maintenance program item, so if it's an MPD update, you have the option to either group all your MPD items into a maintenance program. What that lets you do is author revisions and changes and approve them and not have them automatically roll out. Instead, they'll roll out when you publish that maintenance program update. Or you can leave them on their own, and as you modify them one at a time, they will publish individually or become active individually. Above that, we have a block. So this is going to be your C check, A check. With this, we support base maintenance programs, block chain block items, standalone blocks on just your regular repeated cycle, one-time blocks. A requirement can live in one or more blocks. The block itself can have its own scheduling rules. Where this becomes pretty powerful is actually in a few ways. Because the requirements have applicability at an individual requirement level, if a requirement doesn't apply to an aircraft, then it doesn't get initialized against that tail. It'll show as not applicable. So when I post a block into a work package, I don't just get the default set of tasks that live in that block. And then as a planner or whoever puts together your work package, so I now have to figure out what things don't actually apply to this tail. The system is already automatically calculating that, and you only get what is applicable to the work package you're building for that particular aircraft tank. Also, you can forecast, contract, and manage against the interval of the block itself. But the due date of the block will come due by whatever the driving task is. So if we have a 5,000 hour interval, I can put requirements with a different interval into that block. So where would all those different things, like what would a real world scenario be where this comes in? You brought an aircraft in early for a C check, 5,000 hour interval, you brought it in 4,500, you ran out of time. So you took 15 tasks out of that block because you still had 500 hours of green time remaining on it. No problem. We are still tracking your compliance against those individual tasks. You have 500 hours remaining. Planning will see them being forecasted to do with 500 hours. You can still sign off and accomplish all the work that was done in the block. But because those tasks haven't been done, you'll see that the next block is actually coming due in 500 hours. It'll show you the calculated due date for the block itself, but then it will show you the due date that it's coming up with because of the driving task that's in it, which is going to be those remaining 500 hour tasks that you still have to finish. If you finish those on a phase, you can bring it in for a couple of overnight anchor checks or something like that, and you're able to get through those last items, then the block will go back to being just triggered by its 5,000 hour interval. So the benefit of this, compared to some systems, names, one of our direct competitors, they don't track the individual requirements in the block. So a block is a block. They have no idea what you actually did within there. And they have no idea what the applicability of the individual tasks are. Below those requirements, we have one or more job cards. These job cards, which we'll be talking about as well, is basically your AMM. Or in the case of an engineering order, it's the work instructions. This is the people, parts, tools, and instructions. What do I need to do? Why is it modeled this way? Your actual documents, they're separate. Your MPD and your AMM are two different things. But also for hangar line 2, but doesn't really apply to line. For hangar maintenance, we automatically do job card suppression. So if I add a requirement for a manual gear extension on the nose gear and a requirement for a gear extension on the main gear, One of the job cards under there is going to be raising the aircraft on jacks and lowering it off of jacks. One card is going to be logging the hydraulic system and reactivating it. I don't want those 4 cards coming from each of those. So it will suppress those duplicates and show you that there are dependencies between them. So it's going to ask you to raise the aircraft on jacks once, log on the hydraulics once, do both of those tasks, then reactivate hydraulics, lower the aircraft on jacks. That's for example. The other super common use here is panel cards. You have 12 inspections behind a panel. You don't want 12 remove panel, reinstall panel. Both because you don't want all those duplicated cards. You don't want them for your airline, and you really don't want them for third party because it's going to be hard to be competitive if you're overquoting by 12x. But also, if that panel needs a PRC kit for reinstallation, you don't want to be provisioning 12 PRC kits to reinstall one panel. And again, we automatically build the dependencies between those. We'll look at our production planning and control tool a little bit later, which is effectively a Microsoft project like Gantt chart that allows you to flow out the entire work scope for a heavy maintenance visit. So the key there is a lot of these dependencies are automatically generated in that plan based on the way engineering sets up the requirements of the job cards and the detail that you provide. Things like technical conditions, on and off jacks, project milestones, what panels and zones are included on that job card, auto generates the panels and the dependencies, etc. Reference document is where we do most of the compliance reporting, and it's pretty much literally what it sounds like. It's a document that you're referring to. So you can register that you've received an AD or an SB or a mod that you're going to do. And then that document typically will generate off of that the thing that you're going to do, whether that's an FPD requirement or an EO to accomplish an AD or SB, et cetera. And we will briefly look at it, but engineering can define what fulfills the compliance. So you can have a structure that says accomplishing this job card, one or more, is what fulfills that requirement. That requirement is what the requirement is the engineering order. It fulfills the service bulletin, which is what fulfills the AD. So from a compliance perspective, we have complied with the AD. How did we do it? Because we authored an EO that has a job card on, that was planned to a work package, the technician executed it, we are compliant with the AD, and if it's repetitive, it'll keep coming up and we'll do it again. If it's one time, you're set. I will, when we get to one of the ADs, I'll flash that up really quickly, but we won't be able to dive too much deeper into it. Other than to say, we support very complex ADs and a very complex hierarchy too, with like multi-part ADs, et cetera. And then the final piece here is off of both requirements and job cards. From a document management perspective, it's a common ask. Document management is pervasive throughout the system. You can do hyperlinks, attachments, contextual hyperlinking from basically every single page in the entire system. Back to the platform for just one moment. We have a list of what we call services. I think there's about 20 of them now that we provide or service to the user on screens where we know you'll always want them, but your system administrator can actually allow those to be accessible from any screen. So for example, document management, if you want to be allowed to attach or link documents from any page, even if we didn't put it there because we expect you to, you can allow that to happen. Non-conformance reporting. You can allow generating or linking non-conformance reports from any page. So there's a list of different services that do a variety of different things. Document management is the key one. Like I said, links, attachments, contextual links. So in this case, if you have a tech docs repository, something like flat irons or a toolbox, what will happen is when a technician generates or reviews the job card, it will, if you set it up as a reference, a contextual reference, it will live query flat irons or toolbox or whatever you're using, passing parameters across to say, here's the job card I'm working on, here's the aircraft I'm working on, here is whatever other parameter that we have that you want it to pass that flat irons needs. And it will then bring back the contextual current version of that. As a technician, though, that will get captured in that execution of the task. So when you do a revision later in flat irons, we have a snapshot of the version you complied with or executed with at that time.
It means that if we have a certain task that require the limitation in the data, for example, we can set up that, and when we set up this revision, let's say the limitation is changed, so the job part will maintenance get automatically updated, right?
You say for the SRM?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there, but yes, absolutely. There, exactly how you structure this, excuse me, because especially for something like the SRM, you're gonna want a lot of the drawings and things like that out of that. When you get into some of the additional details like the individual work instructions, you just want a technician to sign off and say, I did in what is attached from or what has been embedded from the system, or do you want them to have to go down on a step-by-step basis and sign off individual actions that they've done? You can still reference documents need to come into our system. That's where we have things like the job card API that can import job card information, things like that. Also parts, because we're automating parts demands and tooling demands and things like that. Typically, you don't only want a document reference. You need to get that metadata into our system so that we can drive downstream processes and automation, things like that. So the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. And in the case of the SRM, there's even more because things like when you have temporary repairs and permanent repairs and recurring inspections of the temporary repair that terminate once you do the permanent repair, engineering can actually structure that, and that all then becomes automatic. You just pick the SRM reference you want to use, and separate from the documentation that tells you how to do it, the system will automatically kick off, okay, you're gonna defer this item, you've got 30 days to carry out the temporary repair. It then has a monthly recurring inspection, and you have 1 year to carry out the permanent. It's gonna kick that off and schedule it automatically. Then when planning sees that come in and the permit gets executed, it will terminate the recurring inspection on the temporary, and if there was an inspection permit, it can kick that off. Southwest Airlines has their entire SRM model in our system. They actually let their technicians pick most of their SRM references. Also, something else you can control for both the deferrals and SRM is, does it require MOC or equivalent to authorize or approve it, or do you let your technicians do that on their own? So I know it's a long answer, but the capability there is substantially more than just can we pull the card in with revisions? The answer is yes, but there's a whole lot more that goes with it. To show you all of that, that's like a half page out. Okay, so I just want to lay this out because what we're going to really look at for the moment mainly is just these requirements of job cards. But I wanted to kind of have a visual understanding of what are they. So just quick recap: requirements are the what, the when, and the applicability, and the job card is the people, parts, tools, and work instructions that tell us how to accomplish it. Okay. So we're back to, so I just used the hyperlink that took me to my requirements list. And another quick user interface thing. We can search, sort, and filter by absolutely any column, anytime. And we also support favorites and default behavior of the page. So this can show me build state and obsoleted or like previous revisions if I wanted to. I have my page set up to, by default, apply an active filter because that's normally all I'm after. And if I hit clear, we get rid of that and see other statuses. I can also favorite records. And these things I'm talking about here, those are framework capabilities, meaning every list page you go to will behave that way. This isn't just requirements, every single list page anywhere in the system will behave like. Where's my other favorite go that I find here? I'm going to grab that second. I thought I had that one favorited. I guess I didn't. So let's do that one more time. Here we go. So let's go take a look at this requirement here. So basic information about the requirement itself. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but a ton of different things you can do with it. You can create a new one. You can prevent execution of it. I can create a new revision. Initialize if it's manually initializable, which I'll talk about that in a moment. One-click duplicate, set plan by planning types, etc. This planning types. What I want you to remember there basically is that I can set a planning type per requirement. I'll tie that into why it matters when we get into production planning and control later. Basic identification, again, I'm not going to go through every field on here. I'm going to kind of highlight a couple of the critical items. Basic details about it. Does it link to other tasks? Is it linked from? So is there a hierarchy there where one thing kicks off another? There's your technical references. Those are the dynamic links, your attachments. If I want to actually have a static attachment that lives against that thing. Zones and panels are exactly what they sound like. Scheduling. This is the next critical piece. Again, there's a lot of detail here. The short answer is we can do through here, we can do almost everything you could come up with from scheduling scenarios. There's a couple of and that's where we use our workflow automation, where you can write more complex business logic just in a graphical designer. It's actually a business process notation modeler for some really complex things that are just not easy to put into a schedule. But this covers 99.5% of scenarios that you're going to just. Again, I'm not going to go through everything on here. It can be one time, it can be recurring, it can reschedule from when you actually tolerances or execution windows where you can go over or under and tell it how it should behave with rescheduling based on whether you did it early or late. Whether or not the part needs to be removed, if it's a requirement for a component. I'll talk about components in a moment. I should clarify, this is an airframe requirement. This is an MPD item for the airframe itself. Soft deadline just means that it's not a compliance item. It will come due, but when it hits overdue, it will not automatically ground the aircraft. A pretty big one here though, compared to many other systems, is this minimum forecast range. What is that doing? It's saying how far out into the future in days should I forecast this task? We have the current usage of every aircraft. We have forecast models that you can create as many as you want with all different types of models. You can change the model on a tail at any point in time. For example, you have a tail that flies during one season, does long haul. So it's getting low cycles, high hours. Then it switches to flying domestically in the off season where it's getting high cycles, low hours. You can apply it in a forecast model. And when the system looks at what is the date we think that hours and cycles and other counter-driven items are going to come due, it will take the current time on the aircraft and extrapolate out using that forecast model. So why does this matter? One, if you don't want something forecasted until it's within a certain window, cool, you can prevent that. But we don't just forecast the next iteration of any task. You can forecast as many iterations as you want. And in fact, it's not just forecasting it, it exists. So I'm going to leave the screen for just a moment. And this is the thing I wanted earlier that I actually forgot, but I wanted to Once I realized I missed it, I kind of wanted to wait to come back around to it. So just open a new tab here. Again, from a user perspective, this button here is your recently visited pages. So when I click that, it's showing me where have I been recently. So this will pop up. I can go to aircraft. 238 will work. So I'm looking at specifically tail number 238. If I go to open items, space, and open tasks, pull this all up here, and this for a second. It's a single task that we are tracking against this tail. We have the forecasted due date, unless it's a calendar item that and we are forecasting that task. If you look at this inventory view, and I'll come back to this a little bit more later, we have two different types of returns. Really identical, but one lives on a system slot on the airframe, or it can be a component task because we are a component-centric design. Sync portal one, I think it's this one. So this hydraulic thing is very simple. This part number serial number. I'm going to open that up again in a new tab for a moment. So I'm looking at information specifically for it's actually that task. I might have to pull a different screen. So one of the things that I'll mention here is this is a release that just came out about a week ago, actually an early access release that I'm going through. There's a bunch of screens that we just moved to the Angular platform that I was talking about. So that's been a project that's been underway for a while. The entire rest of our solution, or all of our industry is finished. The last few things that we're moving into the new UI were A&D, like backend related items. And there's still a couple of screens that need to be done in the next release. And I think the one I want to show you is still in the older screen, but if, it's important to show you. So I'm going to pull it out in the old UI. You're going to see it looks different. Same data, platform, same solution, but it's not Angular. It's an older. One second.
Yeah. Can you show me the process, if there's a new location in the ANM or in the location in the task card? Currently, we are using task card in the from the PDF file.
Yeah.
So,
Just a moment, and I will show you what that looks like.
Always follow that up for engineering. Are we on topic? Is this the kind of stuff that you're expecting? The engineering group expecting to see?
All right. So this is the older UI, the non-Angular one that we just moved almost all the rest of the screens over to, and the handful that are left are going to be moving in the next release. Version of this is the hydraulic fuse itself, or the tap of the hydraulic fuse. When I look at that particular piece of inventory, history, its own compliance, and that That includes when it's on wing or off wing. So if I remove this part from the aircraft, this doesn't go anywhere. I still have history, I still have current compliance, I still have tasks against it. I will lose. This is our. I will lose the forecasted date. It's no longer a forecast. It's not on a tail, but I'll still see that there's a component-centered design. The current open tasks for an aircraft. So going back, just remind where we are here. I'm looking at tail number 238, and I'm looking at every open item that we're forecasting or tracking against. It is tracking against what is currently installed in this aircraft. If I swap that fuse out for one that is an on-condition part, then that task would just not be something I'm tracking on this aircraft. If an AD is not applicable to certain serial numbers, the AD is just not there for that aircraft. And with that, we are also like assembly based. So if I go and remove a component that has subcomponents, they come off together and they stay together off wing. So I can drop an entire engine and still go to the engine level and see every subcomponent that's installed in that engine, the compliance status for next dues for every part that's on that engine while it's sitting, electronically on the shop floor. Likewise, the other way around, you could do it with your engine build and validation before installing it. And the installation really is basically one click. You're going to say, yes, uninstall that engine, and it's going to move that entire engine assembly time. So where I was going, just I know it's kind of a few extra things there. I meant to cover these earlier when we were talking. What I was coming here for, though, was I was talking about this forecast idea in the number of days. So back to that tail, I'm filtered to active only. If I get rid of that filter, you're going to see that there will be forecast tasks. This is our daily service check. It's set, I think I've got it set for, so the next iteration, actually, I'll just go ahead and filter that. Just to make this easier to see. We already have the active or the next iteration. Oh, it's a work package already. Anyhow, the next one would be there normally the active instance, but also based on how long I told it to forecast out, it has already created the second, third, fourth, fifth instance of that task that we're going to accomplish in the future. Like I could go into this right now. There is already an actual job card, a specific job card that can go into a work package that can have a planned date. It can have material demands. So your planners aren't just able to plan the next iteration of something. They can actually be putting the second, third, fourth into work packages in advance, procuring parts, things like that. I don't know what Swift does in SAP. I'm not as familiar with that, but I know there's a number of systems that can only ever handle the next iteration. You have to do that one before the next one even exists. Just out of curiosity, can Swift do that for you? Like, can it give you the next future iterations? So you have them generated already? Cool. Yeah. So this one, basically that date range then is meant so that I don't want my 36-hour service check forecasted over the next 5 years. I don't need 12,000 of them sitting in my do list. I want a week's worth. That's good enough. On the other hand, if it's a C check, I might want 5 years worth so I can see the next 2 C checks or something like that. From a scheduling perspective, what else in here? I think a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, so you can create or cancel activities on removal or on install a component. So things like you can do an engine install where you have to trigger installation of certain accessories after the install. I can have that kick off. Scheduling rules, this one is by flying hours. It's an 1,800 hour interval. It's going to notify, so there's a one of the options or one of the views for the planner is when should this show up in their planning view versus defaulted not there. Any parts, around parts on this one, I'll use a different example for that after. Detail specific scheduling rules, measurement specific. So, if you have an SRM item that's a crack inspection, but has a crack limit, you can model that where if it reaches a certain limit and kicks off a repetitive inspection, then if the crack goes to a certain point, then you have to repair it. The inspection interval can change based on that measurement. Those are kind of the main scheduling things I want to touch on. Applicability, I talked about this earlier. So you can set up different applicability rules, ranges, etc. And then the system auto calculates what is the applicability of this requirement based on those rules. And in this case, I think all of my aircraft, all of my fleet are applicable to this particular requirement. But again, you don't go through and set that by hand. And if you add a new aircraft to the fleet, it's going to show up in the system. The system is what's determining this field. It'll look at those rules and say, yes, that requirement applies to that. Execution, this is a requirement. We don't execute. We execute in job cards. Job cards. I mentioned there'd be one or more job cards tied to this requirement. In this case, we have one job card. It is effectively the same thing, but at least the job card. Blocks that it's tied to. I don't, this one actually isn't a block, I think. Yeah. So this one appears only in the 2B block. I'm not going to dive into blocks. The scheduling rules and most of what's around it looks just like a requirement. There's a few things that aren't there because they don't apply. And there's an extra tab that shows you all the requirements that are in that block. And then coming back to what you were asking is revision. So what revision am I on here? I've got 2 revisions of this requirement. I can go back and look at what the previous revision looked like. If I'm doing a manual revision, then it's create revision. I can provide what's the reason, what am I doing, etc. Because I can't edit the active task. Well, that's live, the active revision. This one's a revision. Now I can go through, make whatever changes that I want to here. And then I can go through either, and again, I'm a super user, so I can skip steps and things like that. But one of the things you asked about is approvals. So I can kick off an approval process. And again, I can have different approval workflows for different things, different conditions, etc. Once approved, there'd be a point where I would activate it. If it's part of a maintenance program, it wouldn't actually go live until the program was made live. If it's not in a program, then, and this one is, here's the maintenance program. As soon as I activated it, otherwise though, it would roll out this revision. So how does that happen? In the background, there's a job called baseline sync. It's a actually several jobs that run in the background. Baseline sync is one. So that's one that is always running through. It can be kicked off. You won't see it, it just does it. If I activate a requirement, it's going to kick that requirement off and go through and roll that out explicitly. But it's also always evaluating and reevaluating the entire baseline constructs. That's your level configuration, that is your requirements, your applicability, your job cards, etc. And that's what actually goes through the process. It says, okay, you've activated a thing. I need to now go and create instances of that. And that's where it then also uses the forecasting engine to determine how many instances and what is the time frame, etc. And that is actually continuously running and taking, have I accomplished something? Have I got a new integration message for the following system saying the aircraft has just flown this many hours or cycles? When all of those things happen, that forecasting engine is always reforecasting when it expects something to be done. As they come along, I'll talk about a few others, but those are some of the jobs that are just sort of running in the background. User doesn't see them, but they're taking care of making sure all those things are happening the way they're supposed to. As an administrator, from an IT perspective, there's administrative pages for that. There's logs. There's you can set up how frequently you want certain jobs to run. If you do happen to run into an error, there's error logging. You can configure back to a user thing, notifications and alerts. And I have one configured here. for a communication log. It's one of the communications that you have. So when I'm talking about logging, if you want to, you can have that configured to send notifications of different types to users when an error occurs. I've got this one set to send a system notification, but that could also be an email notification or an API call to some other system. There's a variety of options there. And that notification piece, again, that's a platform capability that is pervasive throughout the system. So from a revision perspective, if I'm doing it manually, that is one of the ways that I can do the revision. That's for a job card. The other way is through the job card API. So whether, and this really depends on what system you're connecting to, what it can support, what is the, does it have structured data, what does it look like? And do you want it on a push or pull model? So are you going to have a scheduled event that says go query the system to see if there's a revision? Or is your outside system going to call our job card API and say, here's a revision that I have? If it sends a revision through, of let's say this requirement, the system would automatically create a new revision in revision status, and it's then there available. And usually what you're going to have is, and I don't have a great one, but it would be a lobby for engineering that would say, jump cards in revision or something like that. And you can configure that to look however you want it to look, as far as who it prompts, how much details, just the counters, the list, whatever is presented. Those are typically the two main ways that revisions are going to get in, either because you manually come in here, you click revision, and you type on the keyboard and you publish it, or you have either a push-pull model where either we are querying an outside system to say, hey, do you have your revision for me? Or the most common one with Toolbox and Flatirons is it's telling us, hey, I have a new job card revision. Here is the info. We'll automatically create the revision itself and queue that up for review. You can pause there for a minute. The logic for job card, exactly the same. Requirement job card doesn't matter. I can go to the, and we will be looking at a job card in a moment, but from a, how do I make a change? It's exactly the same thing. I can either create a revision or through the job card API, we can either query an outside system to see if there's changes or accept and come to a message saying, hey, I have a change for it.
Can the API connect with the PDF file?
Sort of. What, I guess, what do you want to do with the PDF file?
Most of our weight is come in PDF format. So there is some change in the limitation in the IML itself.
Yep.
Finally, we bring and attach the IML then in the job card, right?
Yep.
But sometimes we need to put the limitation in the part where the mechanic should sign this time.
Yep. Yep.
So when the limitation is changed, we need to include it in our job. Is it possible to do?
So there's kind of three layers to that answer. The one I covered already, and then there's two pieces to that PDF part. If it's just a PDF for reference, then absolutely, as part of the standard API call, I can say this is the reference PDF that the technician will see. Absolutely. If you want an interactive PDF, so you're not, I'll talk separately about getting actual metadata that the system can then use, but just the interactive PDF, we don't do that in here today, but IFS actually purchased a company called EmpowerMX. That's exactly what they do and have been doing for quite some time. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head from their customers. Delta Airlines.
Aeromexico, Joramco, Castle, Fokker Service Malaysia, multiple customers.
So that's what they specialize in. We're taking, again, we bought them. We're taking that technology that they have and embedding it in here. Less for airlines, only because your MPDs and AMMs and that are becoming available in JSON format, like structured data. It's actually more for third-party MRO, because you're not going to go through the process of pulling all that structured data in if you can even get access to it. Because a lot of the times, at least the MRO I worked at, we get whatever the customer gives us, like, we work with Gulfstream before with this, we're not a Gulfstream MRO, but that's what we were working on. We don't have access to the publications, it's just the customer giving us those. So what EmpowerMax does is takes those dumb PDFs and can evaluate them and automatically turn them into interactive documents and define where a technician can actually go in and interactively sign for individual steps and individual activities that they're doing. So we have that technology and that capability within the IFS company. It's not yet fully embedded in this. Only bought them about 6 months ago or so. So that's still a work in progress. Then the third piece that we're doing a lot of development on right now, and again, it's not today production, but it's going to be very quick, is we've invested very, very heavily, period. And in particular with our Nexus Black group, one of the things we're doing first is actually evaluation of ADs and SB engineering order. I can't name them, but there's a very, very, very large airline in the US that is partnering with us on doing that specifically because of the amount of engineering orders they generate. So the idea there will be, again, to be able to take a dumb document, just turn it into an interactive PDF, into actual metadata that can be actioned. That one's actually more intelligent because it's using large language models to interpret what the AD is telling you and what the service board is telling you and turning that into actionable activities. On a simpler version of that, though, when you look at an AMM, that technology that will, for third-party MRO, to an interactive PDF for your actual signature piece, but also extract and convert a dumb PDF into structured data so that for your third party, you could get, if they send you a single 400-page PDF and say, here's your work scope, you'll be able to feed that through that, get those as parts to sign, but also extract your tools, your label estimate, your parts that need to go in as metadata so that the part demands can actually be created and flow downstream and tell the supply, we'll buy these parts, etc., without having to type them. And those are like, we've got working prototypes of those that I played with a little bit. I'm not going to give you an exact date, but to be honest, long before you guys are ready to actually do something, those will all be full product solutions. So again, kind of a long answer because it is a long answer. But it's an excellent question specifically for what you're doing though, because at least in my experience, that's always been one of the biggest both challenges and time consuming parts for third-party maintenance. Maybe not when you're third-party maintenance for your own airline where you have this connection, but for true third-party maintenance is you often get just these PDF documents and under their CAMO rules, you're required to execute in accordance with their approved processes. So you have to use their cards. But how do you get those cards into something where you're not just writing on paper? The MRO I worked at was coming up on 10 years ago now. That was part of my job as a project planner and project manager. I had to put these stupid paper packages together to manage it. So I would have loved to be able to stick that through a scanner and turn it into something I can actually use digitally. The technology wasn't there at the time. So in you guys' case, doing both sides of it, it's an important piece.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Scheduling, part.
Yeah.
There is something that usually in the spot. Like say the first minute in the integration down to the pipeline. It's not in home.
Yeah.
So currently we have to do it calculation manually to like the lowest thing. Like we have to measure how many goes the interval, how many percentage of the interval has been used and how many the power has been collected.
Yep.
So we can do it automatically.
Here, we might not have put the edit on this one. I may have to go to the older view for yes. If I'm understanding what you said right, you can have required aging aircraft tasks. it starts at 50,000 cycles, but then it's every 5,000 cycles. So I can right here, I can have an initial interval that is 50,000 cycles, and then it becomes repeat every 5,000. Is that what you were asking?
No, no, it's not. The interval itself is changed. Let's say the LED,
Yeah.
mandate, in the previous version,
Yeah.
the previous version, they said the interval is 10 years.
Right.
Yes, next version came up with a 5-year interval. So
Got it. Okay, yeah. So, what do you want to happen there? If it was 10 years and you have an aircraft that's currently at 8 years and you haven't done it, what will happen is when you go to publish the revision, there's actually an impact report that you can produce that will show you the old schedule and forecasted due date. Again, if it's calendar, it's not forecast, it's real, but if it's hours, say the hours are going to change. And the new one, and it will highlight in red, if you publish it, it's immediately going to be grounded in the AOG. And then either you make adjustments accordingly, or you know that you're going to do a manual deadline extension if you've been granted permission to do that. It depends what you want to do with it, but the impact report is typically part of before you publish either the individual requirement or normally it's part of the maintenance program. When you publish that change, the impact report, what's this going to do? And there's more than that. It shows you new tasks, basically impact going to change or activate the change that you made. Is that what you're asking?
yeah, maybe. Schedule, including
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the impact report is still on the old screen, so you'll have to bear with me while I switch. I'll go to that same requirement. Well, I don't know if I changed the. One second, I know I have an example in here, just need to remember what it is. Go here. I'm gonna do this kind of quickly, just because I'm trying to get to the example you want to see, so I'm not gonna explain what I'm doing here. I'll just get to it and then show you what it looks like. So they're pretty much exactly the same screens. These are the ones that we moved into the Angular UI. And there's just a few that are. This one should show, let's see. Prints. I don't know if it has a schedule change on it, maybe I do. It should show you the layout though. Yeah, here you go. So there's a slight change on this one. So here's the current deadline and the new deadline, and actually this one didn't change. But if there was a change to the interval, you can see here, if it would make it overdue, it would be showing you this in red. And so then if you got ready to do that before you publish it, you can go and apply an extension. If you had to get approval, you can include the reference number that you got for approval for that extension. And it's going to show you all of that before you come in and actually activate the maintenance program itself and roll that out.
Submit the version, and when we finish the task, the program go back to the initial requirement.
It'll go to whatever the
the
default interval is on that requirement, yes. If there's anything I'm explaining that you really want to see, let me know. The only reason I wasn't showing it to you to begin with is just, again, there's so much stuff we want to cover. But if I'm answering and you're like, I don't get it, or that's something I really want to see, please tell me. Okay. Yes. Yep.
How your system generate job card from the third party? And how you create list of material and list of goods that we need.
Yeah.
In other.
So that's in ours anyhow, that's typically in the planning section. Does engineering do that though for GMF?
Yes, yeah.
So the customer gives engineering the work scope?
Yeah.
Yes, so we have been in Brownsville and a third party, but for like bundle discounting.
Yeah. So it's engineering that's doing that, not planning. Okay, perfect. So one of the nice things, just bear with me one quick second. Yes. Give me 2 minutes, I'll come right back to that, okay? There's one last, I'm gonna make this part pretty quick. So I'm on that requirement, I mentioned that requirements have one or more job cards. A lot exactly the same as the requirement, as far as vision handling, et cetera. The main thing I wanted to talk about is, because you have to parts, so that job cards require. We'll talk about that a little bit. Execution, the enforcement skills and certifications, technicians executing work. Here are our part requirements, and this is where for the airline work, not so much for the third party MRO, where we look at all those applicability rules. Typically, you don't ask for a specific, you ask for a part group. You're basically saying, I need one for that aircraft at that exact moment. The benefit to that is asking for a certain number that maybe you don't have. And first, those two are billed, that one's not applicable. Here are the three that are left. You scheduled this work to whatever location. You don't have inventory of these two at that location, so here's the one that I'm gonna go find for you. Because you have available, serviceable, applicable of that number at that place. And even with non-routines, again, more for the airline, that's typically the way that's handled as well. The technician just says, I need a part to go in that spot on this tail. And instead of picking an exact part number, and they can, if you want them to, they can pick an exact part number, but usually you just tell the system, get me a part that's allowed to go there. And then it goes through applicability rules, your different supply rules, your available inventory, resupply rules if the part has to come from somewhere else. There's a whole logic behind that. And that's actually another job. It's called the auto reservation logic. So there's an auto reservation job that runs in the background that is doing all those activities continuously. And not just evaluating, but re-evaluating. If you're doing line maintenance for Garuda and there's a scheduled overnight tonight, and there's a part reserved for that overnight, and then a different aircraft goes to AOG today, that AOG is a higher priority, it's actually take that reservation. By default, there's ways you can tell it not to. By default, it will take that automatically, give it to the AOG. This becomes a part and tools finally. The reason I wanted to touch back on this is just about job cards, but also you were asking about materials. How does that come in? And job cards, this is what your third party job card ultimately needs to look like. And this is the kind of information you still be on there. The main difference for third party is that you're typically not going to be dealing with a partner group because you don't have the interchangeability rule or customers aircraft. So in that case, technicians will be asking for a specific part number to go through that process. So how does engineering get that data in? What we have is an aircraft work package. Is the, it doesn't matter whether it's your aircraft purpose of you're gonna be more perhaps the airline. Yeah. So for our purposes, they're your aircraft. But whether your technicians are going to work on a crew or civilian aircraft or a party aircraft, it's the same work package. The user experience is almost entirely the same. So if I go to look at, hopefully this one has that I wanted. So if I go look at this work package, what I'm going to see is the assigned tasks, what needs to be done in here. So there's a service check comprised of all these individual job parts. And as a planner on the airline side, these were things we were tracking against the aircraft, and we said, put those into a work package. I've kind of skipped that because we'll do that with planning, but that's how they got there. And I can go look at anything that isn't in a work package already over, custom tasks. Here is all the rest of the things checking on that there and add them into this work package. For third party though, a little bit of what I talked about earlier about the job card loading and the different options there, but also in the here. So when you don't have those things you're tracking, you just tell us just to put those in a work package. You need a method for loading that data in so you can get a work package created. So again, you can do that in a couple of ways. I could come in and simply create a blank work package by hand. And typically I will still create the work package itself with who's it for, when are we anticipating it happening, where do we think we're going to plan it, although I don't have to have the where right away. But eventually I'm going to load the work package to that. And our work scope loader, and I don't know if I have an example with me in a second here. I think I do.
Yes.
This afternoon, we started a lot of people from planning attending the afternoon session.
Let me check.
Do we like to take more of the rather this morning to cover planning topics or the issue?
Oh, I'm not sure. I have to ask Andy first.
We have anyone else from planning that's here?
Dari plan lain. Oh.
That's what, which task is, critical. And I, and then, independent extension method. You mentioned, something.
Okay. Yeah. I definitely push. Yeah, understand. Just looking for here, I think I've got one. So the default format, you're getting data from the customer currently. Sorry. I opened one up with a single line and let me do this. There. So, and then again, I'll read all the fields to you, and this is going to depend on how you can get the data from the customer. So the import that we have predefined is the CSV. So going across, it's going to have the task description, where is it, is there job card code, zones, panels, durations, labor, etc. Again, I'm not going to read every field to you, but if you can get the data in that structure from the customer, then you drag and drop the file onto here, it's going to bring that into the work scope for realistically where that goes is more towards what I was talking about earlier, where with PowerMX, where you can take PDF, not your this with your PDFs, right? So that's where the X and by ability to crank it in, where it can actually scan that dumb PDF, and it hopefully won't be CSV, it'll actually turn into a JSON message that will go through the same language where be able to use the work package for this, or prompting for this. It'll be able to out from that process. Where you can have write this video just loading or by the net where but it is each you get involved. And then you get more projects where it is you can take that PDF document, share it through one of our AI get it done so based on a structured data format so that for it and it was structured this is number this is the how many hours this is the certification field these part numbers etc and it will be able to load that scope for you. One of the kind of key pieces there though is the work package itself. Again, I'm just going to jump to a different one here for a moment. I don't have a lot of good third-party examples in my download data right now, but when I look at a work package, if this is for our own aircraft, so that's something I want to do. Second. It's part of the house. Here. So, this one.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, udah bilang.
Sorry, I'm not ignoring you. I'm looking for a specific work package that has the details that you asked about. Sorry about that. Again, the only problem is we don't run an airline, so we only have a certain number of good examples in our data. I don't have 25,000 word packages to pick from the past, so finding the right one that has what I want to show in it. So a couple of things I want to highlight here. This work package does happen to be for basically what would be one of our own aircraft. But we can get into things like critical items. So you can define, I don't think I have any flags, but you can define what are your critical items. Separately from that, when we look at PP&C from a planning perspective, on the Gantt chart, you can see your critical path as well. So items can, as part of their sequencing, it's slightly separate from critical items, but it can define that critical path that tells you whether you're on schedule to meet your turnaround time. But in here, we can define, what critical items are part of that work scope or this particular work package. And that doesn't matter whether I'm using this for my own aircraft or whether this is for a third party. And what is the driver for that critical item? All of these drop downs usually throughout the system are configurable by you as well. Normally, there's values there that do certain things that we deliver out of the box, but most of them can be extended if you have other values, other things that you want added. Excuse me. So those are the critical items, and you asked me something else. There was another one you wanted.
Dashboard.
Yes, the dashboard and the priority list. So there's several different dashboards. One that probably you're looking for is, and I'm gonna apologize now, I do not have any good completed third-party work items, so there's nothing. You're gonna see the layout, but I don't have data there for these ones yet. And that was part of this change with the user interfaces. I just haven't had time to set it up yet. But your non-routine revenue analysis per individual work package, it's going to give you what your plan were, what your non-routines were. It'll define the approval status of every item in there, what the commercial rules were around it, whether your caps were exceeded, the contract grouping, contract lines. Non-routines for approval, same idea. It's going to show you what non-routines have been raised that are pending approval and what are the contract rules that are currently applied to that. And then into your commercial monitoring. So for any given work package, what is our new non-routine status, is how many are approved, the waiting, approval rate, et cetera. These are all driven by defining and I do have a contract in here. Contract management, contract. And again, it's pretty simple in this one. But you can get down into the contract itself and define, is the contract for one customer, or you can add multiple customers and you could use the same contract over for, or I can duplicate it. There's an approval process. So this one is actually active and live, because you can have a negotiation back and forth. We can see the contract grouping, contract lines, quick UI piece, user experience piece while we're in here. Most pages have field description capability. I think this one does. It usually takes a second to pop up. But once you turn that on, you'll get explanations of each one. And from an IT perspective, we have the defaults in there, but there's actually a management page for those descriptions, including translations. So if you decide our description isn't good enough, you can actually go and change it and describe it for what you need it to be. And while we do have language packs available, I don't know if we have, I know it's not Indonesian, but my apologies if I forget the proper name for the language. I don't think we have that one. But if you wanted any of these to be available to the users in any other language, you can do that. And just while we're talking language, you can also provide translations for the fields themselves. And if the information is available, it will display it in that language, and the user, I won't click on it to leave here, but I can go in as the user and change what my language is that I'm working. So just kind of going off topic there. Go ahead.
If we have to work project and we have additional cost for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then your system so as if the additional workload is already approved by customer, and so we can deploy the job to production.
If the additional work scope is already approved.
Project.
So Usually, what we do is you load the work scope. It is there, but it is not approved. No one can work on it. No one can do anything with it, but it has to get loaded first to apply the rules to it, to cascade down things like part prices, labor rates, et cetera. And typically, at least in my experience, I'm just speaking from what I did, we didn't have the tools to do it, but what I would want as part of that analysis, and I know you're not seeing PB&C yet, the Gantt chart view, I would want to pull that new work scope in and also pull it into my project plan and see if it's going to impact my turnaround time. Or what impact is it going, because there's a histogram that shows you your resource availability based on employee schedules and skills and the requirements for those jobs. So at least for me, as part of that negotiation, before the customer agrees to it or I approve it, I want to see all those downstream things. So typically, you do have to load the differential, like the new work scope, into the system unapproved. And then you can go through the approval process, whether you want to really evaluate it or just leave it as pending customer approval and then just say yes, that's up to you. But there isn't really any easy place where you could just say, will you approve stuff? And if so, then we'll add it. It's
Different one.
yeah,
So non-routines.
Yes.
Things in commercial.
yes, absolutely. So maybe I should have asked the question better. When you say additional work scope, do you mean for non-routines or because they decided, oh, we actually want you to do this mod for us?
For example,
Yeah. And was the painting because of damage found or just extra that the customer asked for?
they have a newly created.
Yeah.
It's input in the main.
Yes, okay.
But
So that would be, I would call that customer requested scope change. So in that case, yeah, unless you know something I don't, you need to pull the scope in, unapproved, and it will apply all the contract rules, and then you can use. Nobody can work on it, and it won't kick off. Nobody's gonna start buying parts for it. Nothing's going to happen with it until you approve it or decline it, and then it can still live there as work that the customer declined to do. Non-routines though, do automatically appear as technicians raise them. They'll appear for approval, and depending on your contract structure, they might get auto approved. Because you can have pre-approved caps for non-routines, either because the customer gives you standing approval to do up to this many dollars worth of labor or this many parts, or because you quoted a fixed price that already accounted for a certain amount of non-routine. And that's all part of the contract line, the commercial rule, actually, I believe. Let me pull one up here. Yeah, so again, I won't go through all the combinations, but this is basically where you're getting the possibility of pre-approved activities that are added to the work scope back to the original. So for example, if it's a non-routine, the material is based on resources used, but you can go through here and say, where is it rolled up to? Is it from a particular task because it's for a fixed price already? Then it should just be auto approved. Did that answer your question? I know there's a lot of pieces to that. But I think if I can just recap, if the customer's asking for additional scope, the way we're set up, if you want to quote it and all that, you do have to bring it in first. And then approve it. Or not. But we have things like for portal where you can always send them a note and say, hey, we want to do this, do you approve it? If they say yes, then you can go back and add it. That could be done. That's not really the way we intend. And then if you want to go too much further out of that, that would probably get into configuration or if your IT team can say, we want to operate quite a bit differently than what IFS delivers us. That's where that ability for you to cross the solution comes in. if there's a reason you want it to work that way, that might be a case where your current development team goes ahead and says, hey, we're gonna change that and make that work really well.
Itu.
Yeah, just, very quickly, I was on your package. Kind of reiterate how I mentioned the scope of what it looks like is more or less the same. I have the option, this is my own aircraft, I just go and attach one package commercials to us, we're not putting in parts to our own airline, unless you, then you can. But it is third party, you know, I have that option without having to use a different module or a different piece. A little bit, to what you were asking about earlier for the airline module versus the MRO module, they're very tightly integrated. And the final one, actually, you did ask me another question, on the tasks themselves, asking about independent inspection and things like that. So every job card that you're going to execute has a requirement. Where's right. What is that? And with this, you can define, is it able to execute the work? Is it a certification to be able to sign off the work? Require independent inspection? Those are added as individual to be accomplished. And that whoever tries really accomplish, but actually before that, whoever to. So whoever is doing the work execution, crew lead, supervisor, whoever that is, when I go to assign a piece of work, like if I don't have, if I don't think I have this one, so this could work. If I try to assign this to myself, I'm pretty certain I don't have the mechanical skill. I'll never get to the point of trying to sign it off. I can't even get the work. I can't begin the work because I'm not qualified. And we have those three separate stages of skills. You can have an apprentice do the work. You can have a licensed technician sign off the work, and then you can have an RII, which has to be a different licensed technician, do the independent inspection. And we'll talk briefly tomorrow about the HR piece. We can either just bring this information in through integration from whatever HR system you're using, or we have a complete HR component as well. So you can not just say, well, they have a thing. You can define, here's the recurrent training they need. Here is, you know, for certain tasks, maybe it's a fuel tank inspection. They have to have current enclosed spaces training. And if that training expires, it automatically expires their skill or qualification. So we have that complete HR capability if you want to use it. If you're already doing that in another system, then we would typically just get the result of that via APIs that we know what user has what skill qualifications in the system. Then we apply that at the job level. Okay, just for time, I'm going to pivot completely here for a moment. And so we have a variety of different So we have a variety of different quality and reliability, related tools, workflows, functions. I can't. A number of different quality and reliability related, sort of in process pieces that I'll, unless. All right, a number of different like quality and reliability type of functions, things like, when a technician raises a fault on a system, you can define if a fault has been raised within a certain length of time on that system, it's automatically going to prompt them and say, hey, you raised a fault for this, is the occurrence of, and it gives you that 2 degrees to that, and that's going to drive your reliability reporting. We have audits and notifications for how frequently is something come up, and you can been this many faults in this time frame based on the system. That should be an alert to engineering or reliability or whoever's responsible for it. Non-routines, unless it's a logbook fault, they're almost always raised off of scheduled activities, and we inherently tie those together. So from a reliability analysis and also non-routine generation analysis, you have that information to go and say, okay, when we carry out the scheduled inspection, how much non-routine work or how frequently are we finding things wrong? There's all kinds of sort of reliability pieces inbuilt to the day-to-day process. The piece I'm going to focus on here, though, for reliability reporting is really focused around the FAA CAS reporting. And it's built into the logical data queues that you would normally report on. So what we didn't try to do was give you a pixel perfect report that looks exactly. Because much like many other things, if we did that, every single customer we have would say, I want it to look different than that. So instead, we gave it to you as data cubes. So I can go into things like faults. And you're going to see the logical data cube construct of what's in there. So we do give some example ones to start. And I'm going to start with the faults. Ad hoc view. So typically for a reliability faults reporting report, these are the different dimensions and attributes that you'd be looking at. So you can slice and dice this however you want. So I've got rich code already. I can't see that well from here. I'm going to pick something and hopefully get it. Yep. I know it's a little extreme, but let's say we specifically want to look at fault severity type. So I can add that to the rows that are included, and I can go to type and I can make a filter, reasonably sized, and I explicitly want to look at AOG faults. I can apply that. Oops. If I was a better user, I'd do that right. Yeah. So we're filtered down to AOG only. Anything that logically could be a drill down is, so I can drill down further, and eventually I'm going to get to a count. That's a faults per 1,000 hours. But if I get the actual fault count, this is the one I can drill down into. It's actually going to return those 106 records. If I'm doing analysis of, okay, what were those faults? And it's going to have nearly every attribute that there is to that fault. And again, you could modify or change that, or the answer is you would drill down into the actual fault further to get that information. So here are the attributes of every one of those AOG tagged faults. So you can slice and dice this however you want to, depending on which one it is. Some of them work pretty good as different visualizations. I always pick one that just flat out doesn't work. So we'll see if I get any luckier today. And it's not terrible. So I can switch how I want that to look. With this reporting engine, I can save it as a new name. I can export it to all kinds of different formats. I can schedule this job to run on a regular basis. With that schedule, if I wanted to, I can set it to auto, either send an attachment, send a notification with a link to it, to different distribution groups, different emails, etc. So that's a super quick view into that. As you can see, I mean, there's lots of different options there. How we want to view it, like we can slice and dice it by not just the filters, but different criteria, and break it down in different ways. And again, the main, and I can have different versions of this because it really is as easy as save as, and I can come up with different iterations or different formats. You know, in this case here, let's say that I know what the operator code is, I don't want the name, I'm thinking of that. It's pretty easy. Pick the name out of our list. And we will put this back to cross nav. Back to cross nav. And again, I can slice and dice, format this, save it, structure however I want. And the main elements are broken down into those common domains that you're usually looking at. Which is fault reporting, component removals, that'll give you both scheduled and unscheduled component removals. Because a lot of organizations anyhow, you do have a separate report for scheduled removals because often there is still a, or might be an analysis of those scheduled removals. And you get your SHRP report because the repair costs twice as much as it would have, because even though it made the overall interval, it was going to fail imminently. And okay, what's the reason for that? Should we remove it earlier so that the repair costs us less? Is there something going on, whatever the case is? Or your unscheduled removals, your flight disruptions. So when you raise a fault, you have the option of adding flight disruption information. So what was the result of that? Was it a delay, a cancellation? How long was the delay, et cetera? And I could drill down into any of these and they give you that same data cube type structure where you can pick and choose which dimensions and measurements you want, and you can save a variety of different versions of that. Only other small detail that's worth pointing out specifically is, particularly for non-teens, there's the technician's ATA that they report. After the fact, if engineering reliability goes back and looks at it and says the technician picked the wrong ATA, you still leave that ATA intact, but there is a, I forget what we call it, field, do we have a correction, which is different? And there's a, like, it's called reliability ATA or something like that, where you can change that value and the reliability analysis will pick that up and say, okay, it was incorrect or categorized by the technician. We're not going to change what they documented and recorded, but we need to tell the system for analytics purposes, so you use the right ATA. Yep.
The user interface is different with the previous one, right?
Sorry.
The user interface.
User
User interface is different compared to the previous one. It's a different system.
So this one here is actually our, it's still part of the platform. With the move of the UI, we actually are switching reporting platforms as well. So we were using Jasper reports. With the move to cloud, there's both the embedded, like our own proprietary reporting engine, plus the ability to use Power BI. So, but this isn't going to be deprecated for quite a long time. All of our current customers are using it, and moving their reports into the new architecture, into the new UI will probably take some time. So yes, this looks different, but it's a dedicated reporting platform. You can link to or hook to any of these reports here from the UI. And in fact, you can bypass the UI entirely. There's like you can go to say, if you want to run the AD compliance report from a tail, how would you like it run? If you want, and I've done a few of these where I want it in PDF format, I don't even want to see the user interface. You'll click the button in the background, it's calling the report engine. You've told it it's a PDF, and you see a file download appear that is your compliance report. Or it can launch the UI here and give the user the interface to ask for what are the inputs that you want to provide, et cetera. You can also develop your own reports. In here, we don't have all the reports out of the box. It's just a demo environment. But our shift is towards the cloud reporting engine, and to be candid, more and more customers, they're using Power BI, and airlines at least, a lot of them are moving towards, even though we have good reporting tools, they're building data lakes. They're aggregating data from numerous systems, and they're building other reporting tools on top of that. So, you know, we're a source typically to feed that data lake. A lot of the operational reporting will normally still come out of our system because it's more real time, it's pretty specific. And then a lot of deeper analysis and things like that ends up coming out of their data lake. And that really just depends on what each customer's, strategy is for the reporting. So back to the question. This is actually a different UI completely. It's not, it looks kind of like the old one, but this is actually Jasper Police. We put the IFS branding on it. It is delivered as part of the product. There's no additional licensing. There's nothing you have to do. It's just there. It works. It's connected to what you're using. And then, as I said, moving forward, most of this is slowly migrating over into the core cloud reporting engine and embedded Power BI and loggies. A lot of the legacy for our current airline customers, especially, a lot of the legacy reports that they run shouldn't be reports. They should be dashboards. They should have been things that a user just sees. But because in the old UI, dashboards weren't nearly as good, the only way a user could get the information they wanted was by running a report. So a lot of those are actually going to get, like the customer's custom reports, they'll just deprecate them once they have a lobby that serves that purpose to the user. Again, I know it was a long answer, but there's a lot more to it than just, is it an older or newer UI? So that was a super quick pass on the reliability side. Is that there's a lot of quality and reliability pieces that are more in process flow, but from a pure reliability reporting perspective, that's the core structure.
So this is a data cube, right?
So the data.
So basically, what percentage actually from the IFS point of view?
Yep.
That the data can be fed automatically here for the reliability reporting.
Yeah. So everything that comes out of IFS to begin with is there automatically. Now, this is a demo data set underneath, because again, we don't have running airline. But your data that we have is there automatically. There's a scheduled job that rebuilds the cubes. And there is an import UI. So let's say you're upgrading when you move from Swift to whatever you choose. If there is data that you want, we show you what the data model is. You can actually import that data into the cubes as well. So you're not starting from an empty environment. If you believe the data you have is good enough quality that you want to continue working with it, you can bring that into these cubes as well.
Can you go back to the main? So I just want to make sure, so the faults, the component removals, the sub-assembly operations, all these three is already built in the IFS.
These 5 cubes are delivered to you out of the box, ready to go.
But flights, we don't have the information, we need to have it from the airlines.
So if you don't have anything to start with, those reports are going to be blank. Like you can start with an empty system. And you will build that up over time as you use it. So remember, this is one system. Like unless I'm missing something, your airline, like you guys are defining level configuration. The airline is operating the same system, so you're getting all of this information.
No, it's different. So basically, Garuda and Citylink has their own system, right? So
Sorry, who, what?
Garuda and Citylink have their own system, so that the flight operations will be on their system.
Flight ops, like flight
Yes.
planning, flight
Yes,
policy.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so those are on their system.
Mhm.
So I'm just focusing on the one that they are more part, which is the component removals, falls, and sub-assembly operations.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that this data is basically already built in IFS,
Yes,
and the Jasper is only just collecting.
Yeah.
Based on the transaction.
yeah, as you use the system,
Uh-huh.
it's reflected here.
Okay,
But if you have data today in your current system, then you see into that, you can import it directly into a queue. You're not going into like the emerald piece, but you can pre-populate the queue if you want to bring data forward. I will also add just quickly on the flight side, we have all that information too. We are always fully integrated to every airline's flight system. A lot of that stuff we have to have. So when you go look at, in our system, like, we know every flight that's planned and we know every flight that's been completed. We need the completion information because that's what drives the accumulation of hours and cycles of time on every component. And we need the plan because I mentioned the forecast, but actually what we do to forecast out, we first use planned flights for that tail until we run out. Then we do the forecast model. It also drives the, I have it marked here. But the station monitoring and turn assigning, all that stuff, we need to know where is the aircraft, when is it arriving, what gate is it going to as part of line maintenance.
yes,
So we, on the data cube side that you were asking about, we absolutely have all the information to drive those data cubes as well. That is in our system. Even though flight ops is the source of truth for that info. We're fully integrated. We don't have a single airline customer that's not fully integrated with the flight ops, like volume system.
Yeah. How's everybody feeling?
It's a lot, all right?
That's all.
Any major gaps?
maybe we can. I think there's so many things that you want to show during the demo, right? I'm just afraid if I ask in the middle, we will lose track of the timing. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe after the session. we can-
Okay. Any other questions or feedback right now? Okay, that's the time that we allotted for this week. I know that it's a planned process that Deloitte and your team are going through within this evaluation. We're open to putting in, additional time as allowed. So just let us know, other questions or concerns that you have and we'll address those separately. We're gonna chat, outside of the session. Okay. We'll take a break.
Yeah, let's have a break, 1 hour, and then we return.
Thank you very much.
Ya, kan jam 1 lewat 5, Pak.